vibration destroys our generation. I don't mind. I don't mind. I don't mind. I don't mind. Looking for inspiration in my life. Looking for inspiration all the time. Looking for, looking for, looking for, looking for. Hey!
Okay, I think we're back here, folks. Apologize for the technical difficulties. Oh my goodness. Yep, I had to reboot the system. I should have known better. As far as making sure that the mic was actually being functional. Alright, I think we got things a little bit under control now. Let me get background music going again. Alright, there we go. Now I think we're rolling. Sorry about that, folks. I should have known better. My own fault. Getting the mic going, I guess, as far as before after rebooting prior to the start of the stream. So apologize for that. All right, let's. That freaked me out a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. All right, but we're gonna roll with this. So, welcome everybody. That's coming into the stream here. Getting some things set up to start applying what we didn't finish last week on our starter stand. be it the Ambient Occlusion in particular. But we first need to get the box that we created around our starter stand. I'm going to go ahead and bring this over right away. Without further ado. Alright, so let's go ahead and bring this up. Let me know if the music is a little bit too loud. It seems to be okay on my end, but I just want to make sure, just to let me know if that's the case. I'm glad to adjust that accordingly. So, max, here we go. So what we did last week, if y'all remember, we had created this box around for our panels for our starter stand. Racer James, hey bud, stop for a little bit. Cool. How we doing there, James? Racer James, thanks for stopping by. Something else, I guess, that I forgot about. George said he couldn't make it tonight. Yes, Torch did. He did message me, I guess, about that too. Yeah, he decided to spend some time with the wife this evening. That's good. No problem. He stopped by here last week, and yeah, we had some pretty good conversation going on there, so that's cool. Appreciate. Yeah, but thanks for letting me know. One thing I do want to thanks for mentioning that too. That reminds me. Torch had subbed to the channel last week, and the alert did not work, but it did happen to come up through my my stuff here. So I know he's not here, but I'm gonna go ahead and do this anyway. Yeah, I want to get that. I want to make sure make that, because that alert did not go through last week, so I want to make sure I get that taken care of. So thanks for reminding me there, James. I know, like I said, I know he's not here at the moment, but he'll more than likely probably catch the VOD for sure, and let me know how I did or not. It's like, yeah, so cool. James rocking the Founders badge too. Appreciate you. Okay, so yeah, as we were saying, I know there's people slow coming into the stream there, so that's cool. I did fix something else I want to mention too. Got some things to get out of the way. So yeah, the deal with Torch. Thanks, James, for the reminder. Something I did fix with the commands, and this is for all the viewers out there. If you find something that you find interesting, important, or anything like that during the live stream, I updated the command to highlight, to do a timestamp, and it will let you know in the chat. So if you type !clip into the chat, it'll necessarily create a timestamp for that, and it will let you know in the chat that it was done successfully or not. What that'll do is it'll just like it mentions as far as just create a timestamp, so you don't necessarily have to navigate away against from creating a clip. I'm not trying to discourage viewers from being able to create a clip, as far as through the normal Twitch processes there. Just gives you another option to still be able to engage and not, navigate too far from the live stream and miss something else, and just do that command in the chat, and that will necessarily create a timestamp on my end to show where you might have found something important, interesting, or what have you. And I'll take a look at those at the end of the stream, and yeah, to sort through those. And if it's something that was pertinent and not just done by accident, I will make sure that I get it out there in the form of a clip. And I'll do that as a service, I guess, for those that do stop by the stream, just to show my appreciation for that. So it's just another option for the viewers out there, I guess, as far as being able to provide clips or perform clips, I guess, in the live stream. So yeah, we got that all out of the way. I do want to appreciate all the people coming in. We had some followers off stream too, so that was pretty cool. Glad to see that there's some interest, I guess, in this type of thing we got going on here. Regardless of what type of thing that you're actually trying to apply, these things to that we show off, and I speak for Racer James and myself, being the prime candidates for Spline Design Studios, which we dedicate this stream for every Saturday. just showing off some of the things that we know that we're sharing with you, the community, and whether you want to necessarily be proactive in executing these types of things, or just at least appreciate, I guess, what goes into these types of things. So, okay. Enough of my rambling. We'll get right into this here. So, yeah, as I was saying, we did create these panels to put on our 3D model last week. What we need to do now in order to apply the ambient occlusion to it, which is just the general shading to the model, and I did do some test runs on this to kind of see how it was going to turn out. There may potentially be some areas that we might have to correct as far as the model itself, but I figured if anything, I'll kind of show that off in the stream to show the potential problems you might come into as far as applying such things as ambient occlusion, and how important it is to make sure that a majority of the areas of your texture mapping don't touch each other. We'll talk about certain things like, you know, the padding and all that stuff, basically all the settings. There is another command that I did put in the chat. You feel free to type in !AO, just short for ambient occlusion. That'll take you to a clip, a video tutorial that James has put together as far as all the settings that are applicable, I guess, to that process. And yeah, he kind of generally goes over all the settings, I guess, to get the basic results that you want for that. It's a very basic and straightforward instruction there. So, and James putting that up there too. Yeah, and it's not case sensitive too. That's probably another fair mention though. It's not case sensitive. So that is the tutorial that we'll go over to that, and that's also in the playlist for Spline Design Studios how-to videos over at the Spline Design Studios YouTube channel. That's via !how1 in the chat. We'll take you to that playlist. So I just kind of pinpointed, I guess, that specific video that's in that playlist there. But plenty of videos just like that one that are in that playlist that necessarily apply specifically even to 3ds Max. All variations of that. You've got for 2000 Max 7, 2014 mostly, but and understanding there are different versions of Max out there, but pretty much all of those still apply to those different versions as well. So just making that aware to everybody in the chat. So yeah, as I was saying, we're going ahead and need to get this box textured, and I'm gonna go ahead and open up my let's do this. Yeah, look at my desktop. I got a lot of crap on my desktop, so don't mind that. Lots of things going on besides this little project. So but it does give you somewhat of an idea of what's happening besides these things. It's hard to keep some of this stuff sorted. I got a lot of Farming Simulator 19 stuff. Been playing around with some set of cores of stuff. There's some new NASCAR mods that are coming out with that. It's been nuts. Been super fun though. Not to get too much off on a tangent. So we have our texture for this thing here, and we already went over this last week as far as shrinking this area down, and we could probably go even further for our framework of the starter stand. These areas here, in fact, I can already tell right off the bat, we're going to have to do some adjustments to the mapping of our model to create more space, and we did kind of go over that last week, like as I said. Yeah, there's definitely not enough space. I'm going to go ahead and open this. Let's go right into our paint program. I tend to prefer mostly PaintShop Pro 7, which is the 10th anniversary edition, I believe. It has some really nice plugins for it. I know there's other versions out there. Whatever paint program you find it necessary, I guess what's your pleasure, feel free to use that. A lot of these different paint programs have much the same options. Some have more than others. Some have even more robust versions, I guess, than others. So yeah, there's no specific paint program that you need to use. It's just whatever you find. So yeah, we got all this. This is part of our wire that we already have mapped for our texture, which is all the framework. And by the framework, it's just less the box that we created last week. So I'm going to hide the box. Let's go ahead and hide this. So if we hide that, this is our framework that we already have mapped to that area. Let's kind of zoom in on. This is all the framework. That's the wire. And I already know off the bat, as I mentioned last week, we're going to have to shrink this down. We don't need this much area for that framework. We need to create more area for our panels. So I'm thinking if I can create 4 of these blue boxes, which are just going to be a placeholder for now to get this map, and I'm probably going to put some text on here to get the orientation of those panels correct, so it's not flipped or upside down and what have you. So yeah, we'll go into doing that. This is going to be our start of the stream. Is just go ahead and texture that there, but we're going to adjust. Let's go ahead and adjust. So we're going to have to open up a Unwrap Uvw Unwrap Modifier. Okay, so by doing this, got this on an editable poly. Yeah, go down to here and showed this before like this. You can either scroll all the way down and find your unwrap, or you can go ahead and type in here. Just type in, just go U, and that's the first one in the list. You don't even have to type the whole thing. And then I'll apply the Unwrap Uvw. So we want to go into that so we can adjust that area. And then I'm going to select the polys, drag select all these, and I'm going to kind of rotate this around just to make sure I have it all. Like so. Just kind of rotate it all the way around to make sure we have everything. There's some faces I think I did recognize too that I didn't remove. Maybe I did remove them. Yeah, I guess I did remove them. I had some stuff on the bottom sides here that we didn't need. I took out there, so I did a little bit of cleanup on as far as off stream. Okay, so let's just gonna make sure all this stuff is highlighted, like so. And you can do it this way. I'm just kind of showing this way, as what I try to do is show every which way you can do this, or you can go right into the UV editor itself, which is probably the better way, to be honest. And let's load our texture in here, like this. So this is the whole area, so I've selected that way. You can see everything's selected this way, but I did it right in the viewport. But the other way, that's probably the best, is to go right into the UV editor itself, the edit UVWs. This is the mapping for the texture onto the model. You can just drag select it in here too. So that's, either way you can do that. So with all that selected, what we want to do is just kind of shrink this down. So I'm just going to grab a corner and I'm going to shift drag this down, straight down. I can make this pretty darn small, to be honest. I want to leave enough room for 4 of these panels, because we got the inside and the outside to deal with. So this is probably better, and then we'll have to adjust the texture based on that. So basically all I'm doing, without necessarily needing to create a wire, another wire I guess in our texture, I'm just going to cut that in half. So this area that's in our texture, I'm just going to cut it in half. But that'll give me an idea. Okay, so if I'm going too fast, definitely do let me know. I'll be happy to answer any questions any of you have. So with that done there, man, it seems loud. Do let me know if that does seem too loud, I guess, for the yeah, I guess it's a little bit better now. That seemed loud, I guess, from the start there. Okay, so I got that down. Now what I can do is I can adjust the texture. Based on that, I'll go ahead and turn the wire layer off. Eventually, I will end up making a new wire once we got this all textured. So all I want to do is just in this area, this gray area, just cut it in half. Roughly in half. Let's see here. I think I got that. I'm pretty sure I've got that. There's the panels. I got that separate. I got a lot of this in layers. That's That's the bottom floor. Maybe I did pipe frame. There we go. Just see, I got this all in different layers, so I can take this layer, just highlight that layer, and I can just cut it in half, roughly. So it'll go like this. And all I'm doing at this point is just roughly putting this in. You know, it might be too much, might be too short. When I make the wire for it, I can adjust it. But for now, I'm just gonna go ahead and cut this out. I want to be able to get 4 of these blue placeholder for the panel. So it'll be the inside, outside. Well, 2 for the inside and probably 2 for the outside. That's what I'm thinking. That's my initial idea. So I can go into panels. And I'm just going to make a copy of those. And do a paste. And there are shortcuts for all this stuff too, but I like to sometimes just go into full hold your hand mode. You know, just to kind of give you an idea of how to do this. But there are shortcuts for a lot of these items too, as far as like what I just did. So just keep that in mind. I'm not trying to detract from it. It's just I like to show the long way, I guess, as well. Showing all different options. So I tend to go from full hold your hand mode to just like, you know, doing it really quick. So sometimes I don't want anybody to lose anything about doing this. These streams are meant to be instructional, as I've mentioned before. So what I'll do with this, satisfied with that, I'm gonna go ahead and crunch this down. I'm gonna flatten that down, and we're gonna save this as a new texture. And I think I just got that as a bitmap. We don't have any transparency in it yet, so we're just gonna go overwrite this one, and that should do that. Now what'll happen if we did this right, it'll still be in this area. That's where we have the wire for the framework of the model. So that should still be in that area. So we shouldn't see any anomalies in our texture. So if we see any blue or anything that we shouldn't, then we didn't adjust our texture right at all. This looks good. And just to make sure, I'm going to go into here and update it in here. So what'll happen is this gray will go away, and it'll kind of give me a better idea of where this framework, this wire is ending up here. So let's go view and update the map. See, that shows our new texture. And let's go like this. I think we did pretty good. We can adjust this a little bit more. So from here, I'm just going to go ahead and adjust the, whoops, going to go into polys. And, you know, that's something I mentioned before. You can do a lot of the things right in the edit UVWs itself or in the viewport, as far as like over in the rollout here. So drag select all that, and I got a little bit more I can go down. If I zoom in here, you can see how much this part here is not quite in that color. So I'm just going to grab this corner and drag shift this down here like so. So just a little bit of adjustment. So I was pretty close as far as how much I cut that down in the texture. So, oh, that song is a bit loud. Okay, thanks for reminding me. I can adjust that. That one's over. Okay, hopefully I didn't drown out too much. Let me adjust the volumes on that. Thanks for letting me know there, James. Okay, why is this one not going? Hello? Yeah, I've been playing a lot of, and I've mentioned this before, and I'll mention it again, royalty-free 8-bit music, I guess, from Techno Axe. It's all royalty-free, so you don't have to worry about let me go ahead and adjust this here. He's got lots of different playlists, and there's one particulars that I'd usually do have going up here. I'm going to go ahead and adjust this. Okay, there we go. So I turn that down just a tad. But yeah, lots of really cool, and they're all free, like I said, all for royalty free. Techno Axe, and that's TEKNOAXE on YouTube. Lots of good. I do mention them as far as the credits for the live streams, you know, in the VODs. I do mention them. I think he's got a lot of really cool. He's got some dubstep and things like that. So I'm just gonna do a little plug, I guess, for TechnoX there. Lots of good royalty-free musics there. Okay, hopefully that's a little bit better. Let me know if it's too low. Thanks for letting me know about that, James. Appreciate it. So yeah, we adjusted our texture here. Getting back into this. That looks pretty good. I can dig with that. So now we got that area, that new area for our wireframe, our framework for our structure. Now we got all this room for our panels that we can texture. And one of the other things I am going to do on this, like I said, is going to put some text on here just to be able to orient the panels on that box of the model appropriately. So I'm going to zoom in on this. Let's move this layered thing out of the way. Okay, so let's put, I gotta back this up here so I can get my layers back. Okay, so let's go, yeah, let's choose some colors. Yeah, so I was working on some stuff for Farm Sim 19. A little bit of a hint there as far as like what I had going on there. Working on a few global company. There's a global script, if you want to call it, I guess, as far as to be able to apply to different placeables on your maps. So as I'm doing this, I'm just going to kind of plug in, I guess, what I've been doing for that. Yeah, pretty interesting stuff. I've been wanting to, I guess, kind of show some of that eventually, but as for right now, I'll reserve that for later. But that's kind of giving you somewhat of an idea of some of the other things I've been working on besides this these little projects for the Scratch build Northworks World build for Nintendo 2003 anyway. So I can put just any text on here. I'm just going to do, I'll just put test. Just put something on there. And all this is going to serve as is just to orient. Let's make this a little bigger actually. Let's make it a little bigger. Yeah, even bigger than that. Yeah, so like I said, all this is going to serve as is just a way to orient the panel once you map it. And it'll probably make a lot more sense once I apply it to the model itself. So it doesn't matter where it's located. All I want to do is have something so that I can put it in the right orientation as far as it not being, you know, flipped or upside down or this and that. And I can even go so far, now that I think of it, I will do that. I'm going to put test 1, test 2, and so on. Put some numbers in it too so I know it's not the same panel. This is just a way of being able to help yourself understand what area of the texture that you're working with. And I've shown this before, I guess, in previous streams. You know, the kind of these little shortcuts, if you will. So it doesn't really matter which order these are in. Just so I have some way to be able to determine which one's what as far as the section of the texture. So we'll go like this. Let's go test 3. Oh, okay. It's like, mouse has been acting up a little bit here, and I think I've been overworking it, to be honest. I've cleaned it out a couple different times during this week, and I've noticed the desktop, I guess, that I use for like that, it does get pretty dusty. And even though it is a optical mouse, it can still get jammed up with crud, I guess, if you will. Alright, so let's do this. Add text. And this one will be 4. Okay, so what this is going to do, and like I said, it'll make more sense, but it's just a way of being able to orient and index, if you will, I guess, as far as the areas of the texture that I'm using, as far as when I map these areas to the model. Okay, so let's just zoom out this a little, and we'll do a layer, merge all, flatten, and we're going to save that texture again as a bitmap. Overwrite that. Very good. And we'll go into here like this, and we'll update it. So now we got all that in there. Very good. So now what we'll have to do is we need to unhide. Actually, I can collapse this for now. Yep, hold all that, and then we want to bring back our box. That's when we want to get textured. So we got our box. Now we got to apply the UVW unwrap to this one as well. That says editable poly, so we'll go ahead and apply that. And again, I'm taking the long route to that, but you can just type the U in the modifier list and it'll take you to this, the very first one. It's kind of convenient in a way. Alright, so actually before I do that, here, let me close this, collapse this. This is probably a better method to do, so just hold yes. What you want to do first, I gotta go in the material editor. I got ahead of myself a little bit. I want to apply the texture to that. Okay. I could necessarily kept the unwrap on there and applied the texture, but you want to make sure you get the texture on the model that you're trying to UVW map. So that's probably fair mention as well. So that texture, I can kind of show that this is our texture. There we go. And just make sure you apply it like this. I don't know why it's doing that. That's not a new texture. Interesting. I don't know why that one's coming up. Usually this will come up when you've got more than one texture applied. Some material is the same. Interesting. So I must have a... Let me go back up here just to double check this. I got this as a 13. What it's telling me is there's 2 of these. Let me go through this. And that very well could be. Just want to double check all these. See, do I? Oh, I do. What is this in here for? Ah, how'd that happen? Must have been something else I was working on. Ah, okay. So these are the textures that were applied to the original scene that James had done. Okay. I think I see. Alright. Not a big deal. What is this one here? I don't know what that one is. Okay. I think we can clear that. Let's see what we got here. So if I go, no, I don't want that. Just clearing some things up here. So I'm just, I can clear this out. Like so. There we go. Yeah, it doesn't look like I have. Interesting. Yeah, so basically, like I said, with that dialogue that was coming up there, it's saying I got 2 the same for 13 default, which, as far as I can tell, I don't. That's a 12, 13. Not sure why I did that.
Searching for music for your next video?
Anyway, so let's do this.
Check out Artlist. With amazing new
Guess I
music
wanted to
added
replace
daily,
it.
and one simple license that covers
Okay, so it did apply.
everything.
That's all I was looking for.
Artlist is
Not really sure why that was
the
coming up there.
licensing
It's
platform for
there
all
might be one in
creators.
the list here that I'm not seeing that was labeled the same. But
Start now and find the perfect song.
I guess for that matter, I'm gonna go ahead and do this.
Artlist, made for creators.
Let's just do, we'll just call this stand. And that's just a material description. So you have your material description as well as you can have your mesh description as far as for your shape, you know, for your model mesh. So yeah, we'll just do that. Okay, so now our texture is applied to our box. That was the main point I was trying to show there. So we got that applied. Now we need to apply our UV. And as I said, you can apply the texture after you've got the Unwrap Uvw modifier on there. I just kind of like to show it step by step. So put your texture on it, then your UV. You can't necessarily do it the other way, but just not to get too far ahead of yourself. Because these are 2 separate pieces of our model, if you look at our items list, if that was necessarily collapsed and you did that UV unwrap without that texture applied to that area, it could cause problems. That's why I kind of like to show it the way I just did. You know, so yeah, if I had this already all collapsed, because I'm gonna be, so far we're only using the same one texture. There's no additional textures besides the one that we're using. So you can get away with that, I guess. But if you're using more than one texture, or if you don't have the texture applied to a certain area of the model that, you know, as compared to what it's already mapped, that applying this first before you do apply the texture could cause you problems. And that's, I can tell you that through this by experience. So with the texture applied there, we got the Unwrap Uvw modifier onto it. Again, you can do this one of two ways. You can select your panels that you want to map this way, or, which is probably your better option, is to go right into your edit UVWs and do it this way. The only difference is because nothing's mapped at the moment, I gotta bring the texture in here actually. So because nothing is mapped right here, everything is going to be on top of each other. So as you select these, you may not get the panel that you want in this case. So to get the one you want, you may not necessarily get it. See, like this one's automatically going to give you this. So it might behoove you at this stage to just select which panels you want in the viewport, and that will show you which one is in here. Okay. So yeah, we'll just go with this panel right now, and this is the outside, and I showed this last week as well. You can tell which panel you got selected as the brightness. This is, you've got this outside panel because there's also an inside panel. So if I go this way, I should select this one. So that's the inside panel. So depending on which one you want to do, and that'll show up in the edit VWs as well. They should all be about the same size, with exception to a couple. There's some smaller pieces in here. So yeah, so we'll go like this. We'll go ahead this way. So we'll go select this one. That's the outside panel, and we got that selected here. What I'm gonna do, we've been generally applying the quick planner, and that'll give me this result. Okay, but you can't necessarily go through all your options to see what gives you the best option. See, that one's still not too bad. Normal map does this. Okay, and unfold will do this. So the pretty much everything but the normal map would be a good option. I'm gonna go ahead with just the flatten map. That should be fine. And I can filter off all these other panels that I don't want. I just want to work with this one. So I can filter that down here. So that'll only show the one that I have currently selected. Alright, so we're going to make this test 1. So we should be able to get this oriented on the test 1 portion. I'll go to this. And I'm just fitting this to this area. And this will tell me too. That's interesting. How come that's not showing it here? Interesting. I think what it might be doing. Let me render this really quick. So we got the two-sided panels. It might behoove me. Now I think of this. It's probably a good thing that it's showing this because we're not seeing it actually show up on the model. What we might have to do is separate the back side from the front side so we can actually see it applying. Because I think if I render this, let me try this. I showed this last week too. Let's see what happens. Yeah, it's not going to show all of it because of the double-sidedness. So I think what I'll do, I'm going to backtrack here just a tad. And that's just the rendering capabilities of the video card that I have, as far as why it's broken up like that, why it's not all showing, and I showed that last week as well. It takes a incredible amount of memory to be able to render all that properly, and that's just lack of memory as far as processing power. Trying to stream this stuff and do this type of thing at the same time with the double faces, as far as the inside and outside faces, it makes it extremely resource hungry. Let's just put it that way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to backtrack here just a tad. I'm going to collapse this back down again. And what I'm going to do, it's probably a good thing it's doing this, because if you ran into that problem, as far as it not wanting to show on there, more than likely what's happening is because it's bleeding through on the backside. and that's why it's not showing up on the model. So what I'm going to do from this point is just isolate the back side panels and the front side, because right now it's all one collapsed model. Yeah, so let's go into here. We're going to select polys. Okay, that's the insides. Outsides, okay. Let's see what it'll do here for me. So that's the inside panels, and again, because of the brightness of that, you can tell which side you got selected. Let's see if we can get the inside panels. Okay. And like I said, that's one way you can tell which side you got. These are all inside panels, because these are all darker. This is brighter. Okay. And I think there's... Yeah, I want to get this floor too. Yep. And there should be 2 more panels. There's one here. Let me see if I can get this. I should have hid the framework actually. Nope, that's getting the wrong side. Nuts. Nuts, nuts, nuts. Okay, go back. Alright, let's do this. That's not gonna work. Why? Okay, what's going on there? Is there not a panel there? Let me see if we render this. It's probably not gonna show me, but let's see. Yeah, it's not gonna show me. Okay. No problem. So I'm gonna back this up. No problem. We're gonna work through this. So what I need to do here, I'm going to hide this framework and just focus on the box here. What I'm trying to get is this panel here. Alright, so let's go back into here. Polygon. Why is that? Is there no polygon there? There must not be a polygon here. I'll be dang. Yeah, I can see there's no texture on it. Yeah, it must be not a panel. I'll be dang. Might have to fix that. I might have done that intentionally too. I'll be dang. Okay, hold on. I might not have put a poly there. There's a poly here. Interesting. Yeah, there's a poly there. I'll be dang. Okay, so yeah, there's not one on the back side here. Okay. Interesting. Okay, we might have to fix that. So we got one here, and on this side. Yep. So we got one here, but not on the back side of that. So I'm gonna fix that. A little bit of a repair here. So what I want to do on this poly, select this one here. I'm going to detach it, like so, just as an object, and then select that. Oops. Go with this. Make sure that's selected, and then I'm going to clone it. We'll fix this a little bit. I'm going to do it as a copy. Object 2. Then I'm going to select it again. Make sure I got object 2. Guess it doesn't really matter. I'll do object 2. Yep. And then select it. And then I'm going to flip it. Go down on my rollout here and flip that. Now I should have one on either side. Okay, so now I should have one. I should have a poly on that side. And a poly on this side. These are 2 separate objects too, so keep that in mind. So on object 1 is this side. What the heck? No, went back to object 2. My bad. Object 1. Come on now, cooperate. There we go. So we got one on either side anyway. So now let's collapse that. These two. Alright, so we'll collapse these two together. A little bit of repair on this thing here. I must have missed that when I did this. I thought we did this as a box, or if I did cut that out. I might have, yeah, I think that's what we did. We did one with the box and we actually cut it out. So yeah, I think I didn't clean that up there, so no biggie. Collapse selected. So now we got this collapsed as one object. And I'm convert this to an editable poly. probably doesn't really matter, but I just get into the habit of that. Every time I collapse, I know it turns it back to a mesh, and you can do a lot more with a poly than you can with a editable poly as opposed to an editable mesh. So now with that done, I can collapse both of these. And I'm just getting it all so that's all one piece, and then I'll select as I was going to do in the first place. Okay, so we'll go collapse. Get that all in there like so, and I'm going to reapply the texture. Okay, convert this to an editable poly again. And then go back into material editor. Oops. And just reapply this. Should be good. Just want to make sure it's fully applied to it. Okay. We're going to assume that is. I thought maybe it would show differently in this area, but I guess it's not. That's okay. So now I want to isolate the inside polys here. There we go. That's what I want. Yep. Much better. Okay, so let's go like this. So I want to do it as all one piece and not several different pieces. So that's all the inside panels. Okay. So now I can detach that. Okay. Just leave that as, I'll just mark this as inside. Just so I know which one it is. So that's the inside panels. And then what I can do is just hide that. Select that and do hide. See, now you can see that. See, this is what I was talking about. Because I hid those inside panels, now I can see what I mapped. See, it's upside down. That's why we weren't able to see it. So when you're dealing with two-sided panels like that, you know, as far as to have a poly on either side of the same, relatively in the same jurisdiction of each other, if you will, that's what will happen. So because you're not seeing your texture on it, doesn't mean it isn't actually there. You just might have to detach those back faces so that you can see actually what's applied, and that's exactly what I just did. So from this point, now we can apply the Unwrap Modifier again, and we can continue. So now you can kind of see why I put that text on that panel. I can see how it's oriented, so I know it's upside down and flipped. It's, yeah, so it needs to go end for end and flipped, or just end for end. So yeah, we need to reorient that as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and apply Unwrap Modifier. Whoops. Into there, go to you. There you go, first one on the list. And polygon. We'll bring up our modifier. We're gonna have to reapply the texture, so because we collapsed it. I don't think from, yeah, it won't let me do that. So because all these other panels are still, you know, in the scene here, so when you go to select it this way, it's not really going to give you what you want. So in order to get what I want, which is this on the test one, I'll have to get that from the viewport. Okay. And then I'll select that. Now I can hide the ones I don't need. Just work on this one. And that's this little toggle down here. So now what we need to do is flip this. Okay. See how that did there. Okay, so you can see how that's reorienting it. Whoops. Careful when I click it on there. So let's do this way and this way. There we go. So now we got it oriented the way we want. Okay. Let me move this over a little bit. So yeah. So definitely by taking those back faces off as far as for the inside of the box, taking that off there, we can now see what we're mapping on these outside panels. Okay, so now from here, I'm gonna select this panel. And I'll do this as test 2. I'm just gonna go all the way around. Alright, so we have this in our, I'm gonna make this a little bigger. And I'm just getting these loosely placed onto the texture for now. If I need to grid snap or you know, kind of clean it up a little bit, I can do that after. So I'm just going to go ahead and do quick planar on this. Actually, I think we went with flatten. Guess it doesn't matter. Okay. And we're going to size this up on our area here. So we'll just get it loosely into place and see how we are here. So we're upside down again. Turn this way. Okay, so to reorient that, we want to go this way and this way. So now we're oriented properly. And like I said, I'll be able to clean this up as far as to get it, you know, put proper amount of padding and what have you into that area. For now, I just want to get it loosely placed. I'm not worried about alignment of it. I'm just trying to get it oriented properly. You can tell this has already shifted more to the right. So as far as looking at it, this in the texture as compared to what's on the, I can already tell that's pretty close. And that's good enough for now. So we're going to do this side and do 3. Okay, so this is going to be, I'm going to get all of this right here for the side. So I'm going to get this little piece, this piece here, and that. That's going to be all test 3. So you have a little bit more freedom being able to do it this way through the viewport as opposed to right in the Edit Uvw. Okay, so I could probably just leave that like it is. You know what? I know what it did. It's like, why is that still highlighted? Let me click out of that. I did control, I still had this selected. When I did the control and select. Okay, so let's do it this way. So I only want that. So I can probably leave this like just like it is, but just for the heck of it, I'm gonna apply a quick planar. So, yeah, so you can kind of see what that did. This wasn't quite fully in there as far as this bottom piece, so I just did the quick planar. So that gives you a better idea. So I got the opening and all that good stuff there. And I'm going to put this on test 3 of the texture. Now you might necessarily ask too, why did I choose this size for the texture? As far as trying to maximize the use of the space that you would create your template for your texture, this is what creates this necessity. I mean, I can totally make these panels probably bigger and take some of this dead space, this empty space out of here. This was just a loose placeholder position for that, you know, for the texture, and that's just a part of, you know, building your texture, I guess, for your model. You can't have most even modern day games, even in this simulation that we're creating this model for, most of your textures have to be what's considered a power 2, which means let's just consider like a 32 by 32. You've heard templates like for 1024 by 1024, 2048 by 2048. They have to be in those particular powers. They can't be like odd shapes, you know, as far as like a 1000 by 1000, say for example. So in creating your texture, you want to keep into consideration, and that's what we've done throughout the entire process of building this model. You build your texture, at least this is my process, build your texture, and then you get a better idea of when you build your model as far as where that area of the texture of the model will be mapped to, and then you can just kind of generally put these placeholders in here as to where these things are going to be. So that's general idea, I guess, behind creating a texture for, as opposed to some other common approaches to modelers would be to just create a 2048 by 2048 texture size, just create, you know, just a solid color, and then map your model to that texture, because you need to have that in order to get a wire, and then just be able to segregate the wires and then kind of put the wire on your solid color texture where you want it, and then you can deal with as far as how the texture is actually applied to the wire of that. So there's more than one way, I guess, to create your texture for the wire mesh of your model. So you can't necessarily take the approach, as I said, to create your model entirely Not even worry about the texture just yet, as other than it being just a solid color. Apply that solid color texture to your model, and then deal with where you want your wireframe, your wire mesh for your model to place itself on, so you can map out your wire mesh as far as like that, and not even worry as far as like what actual texture, it's like what you want to show up on that wire. That's one way to do it. The approach I've taken is to create the texture first and then build the model second. So hopefully that makes sense. More than one way, I guess, too. The main point being that there's more than one way to create your texture and your model. You can do it model first, then texture, texture, then model. It just depends on what it is you're building, what it is you're trying to put together, as opposed to, yeah. In this case, it's a pretty simple structure, even though we did add some detail with the 3D framework, as opposed to just simple box frame. We've added quite a bit of detail, so you can see I got that. This is oriented properly. So you can kind of see that test 3 in that area. So you can see that portion of the T is cut off. So yeah, I've added that little bit of padding all the way around, kind of cheap, a little bit, and that's just to consider the potential ambient occlusion that we'll apply later. Is that padding? Okay, so there's that side. So we got one more panel on the outside here. So we'll go like this. Try not to ramble on too much. I tend to ramble on too much. Do let me know, I guess, if I am tending to do that. And if you need to get my attention, if I'm focusing too much and missing something in chat, I have several audio commands to be able to get my attention. One being exclamation point hit. There's a toasty, exclamation point toasty, and I got some farming ones in there too. So yeah, feel free to use those. You feel it necessary to get to, my attention, because I do get focused on doing these types of things, but I don't want to lose too much focus. So just keep me honest, if you will. All right, so with that selected, zoom this out, and I'm going to do flatten map on this one. Now, as you can probably tell, I'm doing between a quick planner and a flatten mapping. As long as your approach to this should just be, as long as you're, what I'm doing here is just putting simple text on here, simple font, to get the orientation of that poly that I'm trying to texture map, map the texture to. As long as you're getting that, the result that you're looking for, that's all that should matter as far as the mapping. If you're mixing it up as far as doing a flattened map as composed to, a quick planner or whatever, it doesn't really matter. I know some modelers will necessarily take the approach to just completely normal map, or just quick planner the entire model. What it basically boils down to is you just need to use the mapping technique as far as a quick planner, flatten map, normal map, whatever is going to get you the result that you want from your texture on your model. So there's really no right or wrong as far as applying a normal map, quick planner, flatten map all in one model. It's just however the texture presents itself, how it orients itself onto the model from the texture. Okay, I just want to make that somewhat clear. So with that mapped onto there, now we just need to get it aligned onto test 4. Okay, zoom in on this, get this loosely placed in here, and this one looks like it is upside down. Okay, see, that's upside down, and you can see again I have it shifted to the left. So this side here, as far as where the test, that space that exists here, so that's good. So other than it being upside down, let's do this, and there we go. See, it's that spacing from the bottom looks good, and to the left side. Yep, perfect. So we'll leave that just like that. That's going to be our loose texture mapping, I guess, for the outside panels, at least, anyway. And we may or may not find it necessary to touch that up later on. But for now, that looks pretty good. So we got all the panels on the outside done. Now what I'll do is I'll hide this box, hide this portion of the box, and we'll bring in the inside panels. Okay. Let's bring in our inside panels. And I think... Alright. Now I'm trying to remember which one did I... So the stand... Yeah, here's our inside, that's right. So it was still box 1, box 01 on the outside. I did name it inside. This is probably fair mention too, I guess, as far as if you haven't noticed. Sometimes it does help you, you know, as you're detaching things, if you can name them something that's going to be recognizable. So when you go in your items list, you know what you're looking for, as opposed to having going through each one and be like, okay, what's that one? You get that option when you do a detach to name it. It does behoove you, I guess, sometimes to name that something that's going to be recognizable when you go in your items list. It's like, okay, there's my inside. Okay, so there's my inside panel. So with that being done, I got this as an editable poly. I need to apply the Uvw unwrap like this. Okay, and then I'm going to go into the editor, apply our texture. It's all the same texture still. Zoom this out. I'm going to actually make this a little bit bigger. So yeah, you can probably get the idea that each time, for each facet or each element or each object, you know, the inside and outside panels, you have to apply that the Unwrap Uvw, I guess, to each deal. So yeah, it's not gonna navigate itself, I guess, onto. Now, if I still had that all as one piece, it would still have the unwrap applied to all those, the inside and the outside. So we saw the difficulty with trying to map it that way. So we found it necessary to have to separate those. But you would have to put the Unwrap Uvw, I guess, on each object at this point. Okay, so with the texture applied, we've got this open, texture's in there. Now we can select the poly that we want to deal with, and I'll do the same thing that I did on the outside panels. I'm going to select, yeah, these are inside panels, I forgot. So I want to get this one here first, and I'll put test 1 on this area. Okay, here's already, I see a problem. I already see a problem without even going any further. So the way I did this, I'm going to have to use the same area for the inside and outside. I don't know if I necessarily want to do that, because in applying the ambient occlusion, that may not present itself very nicely. I'm trying to keep these as separate as possible. So what I might do is even go so far as just adjust these placeholder areas and half them up, so I have a inside and outside on each side. So I'll put the insides on one part and the outsides on the other. That might necessarily work better. So what that would require is for me to adjust the texture. Okay, so I'm going to go into panels, and I'll zoom in on this a little bit. And I'm just going to adjust my panels here a little bit. So I'm just going to go like this. I'm going to half these up here, but I'm going to create different colors for these. So just fine-tuning the texture. So I've already gone this route to just apply simple text on here. So at this point, what I'll do is I'll just apply different colors for the inside and outside, on top of having some text in it, so I know which one is what. So I'm gonna didn't mean to do that. So I'm gonna copy this, edit, paste. I'm gonna kind of resize these a little bit. And I'm in my panels layer, and as I was saying before, as far as being able to fill up, use as much as the real estate that you have in your textures as you need. So at this point here, I'm just going to increase the area that I'm using for the panels, which is kind of what I figured was going to have to do, but I want to kind of show that as far as how much adjustment you can make to the texture as you're doing this. And this is all on the fly, basically. So all I'm doing is just increasing the size of each of these panels. And then what I'll do is I'll split it up into different colors so that I can have an inside and outside along with the text. So this would be pretty interesting. So let's do... This is all part of the process, really. I mean, this is... You find yourself doing this. So what I'm going to do on this text here, I'm going to change this to a raster. And I'm still going to use it. Only is I'm going to size them down. So I'm going to go into this layer. Like this, and I'm going to... And it doesn't matter as far as this one here. All I'm doing is creating two different... So I'm going to put one here. And then I'm going to copy this. Whoops. I don't know if it'll let me do that. Let me see. Yeah, here we go. So I was in the deformation. It wouldn't let me do that. So I copy that. And I'm going to paste this as a new selection. So I'm going to put one side by side. So you can kind of get the idea. So I'm going to create this right down the half. I'm going to create different colors. So I'll have a test 4 for each side, the outside and the inside. Test 3. And so on. Okay. So I'm going to size this one down. Deformation tool. I'm not worried about the size, you know, the shape or whatever of this deal. Just to get orientation on that. That's all I'm trying to do. So I'm going to copy this. And there's shortcuts for this. I can do a Control-C, but I'm doing... Oops, I forgot to paste it. Paste as a new selection, like so. So like I said, I know they're probably different sizes. I'm not worried about that. This is just for orientation. Okay. So I'm going to go into deformation here. And if I really wanted to get critical about this step, I could overlay this like so. And to kind of get it all roughly the same size if I wanted to. Not trying to do this as a painting tutorial, but it's kind of a little bit of an idea there as far as... Whoops, I forgot to... So I want to copy this. Okay. And then paste. New selection. So you kind of get an idea of what I'm doing now. I hope. Okay, so deformation. And again, I can put this up here just to kind of get it roughly in the same size. Like so. And put that back down here. And then I want to copy that. And paste that as a new selection. So here we go. So now what we have, pretty quickly, so now I can split this up. And go back into panels. Okay. What I'm going to do is just apply a quick line through this. Let's see. Actually, I need a color. Doesn't even matter which color it is. So I'm in the panels. And all I want to do is just create a line. So let's change the thickness here. Let's go up to a 2. So I just kind of want to roughly split this down the middle. Actually, I'm going to do a little better job than that. This is just a rough line. Just kind of split that up there. Actually, I can zoom in on this here. Hey, why is my playlist going? Don't be doing that to me. Right in the middle of the song. Fix that problem. Oops. And I do know that there is plenty of ways to do this better, like in such programs as Adobe Photoshop and things like that. Use whatever method that you find it. This is what I find works for me. So just use whatever you find is necessary. I can already tell that it's not 50-50. Yep. So actually, I'm going to redo this line. I can already tell it's not 50-50. Actually, what I can do, now that I think of it, I can turn on my rulers and get a better idea of... Yep, so this is 500 wide, so I can put this at its 250 mark. I always forget about this sometimes. Yeah, so put this right at about the 250. Go a little bit past the panel. Just draw this straight out. I want to make sure I go a little bit past. There we go. That's a little bit better. So that's right on the 250 mark. It's 500 wide. It's 512 basically. It's 512 wide and 1024 tall. But that's roughly halfway right there. Okay, so we do view. Turn those off. Sometimes those can be annoying. Alright, so now from here, I'm still in the panels. I can create different colors for these now. So let's just do this. We'll make this one green. You can pick whatever colors you want, it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to pick some random colors here. I can necessarily do the inside green. I can keep those blue, I guess, so it doesn't matter. Because we got the text still on it, so we'll know the green will be on the inside, the blue will be on the outside. Okay. Yeah, so let's just do that. So we'll create these all green. So that'll be our inside panels, test 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then our outside panels. So that's just making some further adjustment on our panels. Okay. So now what I'll do with this one, I'll crunch that down, flatten that, and I'll save that as a new bitmap. So that'll apply to our model. Okay, going back into Max. So yeah, you can see how that's applied already to our model. You can see the green and the blue. These are our inside panels. We'll probably adjust the outside after. I'll just work with what I got here for right now. I'll have to adjust the outside panels once I get to that. So let's do this one first. Just keeping in mind we'll have to adjust those outside panels. Okay. So with that panel selected, I'll do a quick planner. Filter just that. I need to update our texture in our edit UVWs. So we do this, and there's our new texture. So now from here, we want that on the test 1 still, but this area of the texture. Okay. And we'll check our orientation. Looks like that's good to go. Yikes. Trying to get them both in the scene there, and it's not really working. Yeah, as you can see here, that's already oriented. That's how we need it there. So that one I don't need to make any further adjustment right now. Okay. Actually, let me de-highlight there so you can see that's oriented right to the screen with the test 1 on it. Alright, so test 2 would be this one here. Like so. Zoom out on this and do a quick planner. And put that on test 2. Alright, so let's see what we got here. Test 2 looks like that is already oriented just the way we need it. Perfect. Beautiful. Get this sized up in here. Just kind of loosely doing it right now. I'm not getting real super picky. I just want to get the orientation correct and get it loosely placed in there. So you kind of get the idea how this is working. But that's not what I wanted. On the item list, so we want to get this, this, and that. And that'll be test 3. And we should see that cutout as we do. But see how it's not getting this full piece on the bottom here? So I'll do a quick planner, as I did on the outside. Now, yep, so that's oriented already the right way as far as we're looking at it this way. So this will go on to test 3. Green. It's kind of like a Dayglow green. Fluorescent. Yeah, see that's oriented right. You can see that. These inside panels are mapping pretty nicely. Very good. Okay, so there's that panel. It's cutting the 3 off there, but that's fine. You get the idea as far as the orientation of it. It's not upside down or flipped or anything like that. Okay, so there's our back panel. This will be our test 4. Okay. And again, we want to apply the quick planner. And put this in the test 4 area. Okay. It's turning out to be a pretty chillax stream. Appreciate it. Okay, so there's our test 4. It's already oriented properly there. So that's the inside panel. Maybe quick work of the inside panels there. And they're backwards on the opposite side because that's obviously a mirror effect. Okay. So that's all of our inside panels. So I'll go ahead, collapse this down. For now, we'll go ahead, hide this, and bring back our outside panels, which is the box 01. So as you can see, it's still got it roughly the same thing. You can see it's got the green in it though, because we split that up. They're still they're still oriented. We just have to adjust to get it out of the green. Is all. Why is it not? I hate when it does that. Select the model. There we go. I left the mapping in here, so I know it's gonna have to adjust it. Okay. So yeah, just gonna make some adjustments to it. So let's open up our. See, that's the new texture is not showing up in here yet, so we gotta go view, update map. You can do the Control U, I think it is. Yeah, as far as a shortcut. So you can just go here just to Control U. Alright, so there's our new texture. Set this poly. And we just need to adjust the area. So I'll do a shift drag over here. So get in your own neighborhood. Get in your own yard. Right? So there we go. Here's that one. And I've shown this a lot of times before, or many other times before, as far as to be able to get the orientation of your polys, as far as the, put some simple text on it, put an arrow on it, put whatever you want on it to kind of get the orientation of the texture onto the poly done correctly. Okay, so so we just need to slide this over to the blue. Wrong button. Screwed up too bad. Cool. So we got that. So there's test 1, test 2. Here, test 3. Get all these pieces there. We just need to slide this over. So it's going to cut off the T and part of the E on this one. Yep. And that's fine for now. Okay, and then this one should be our last panel. And there's our test 4. So now that's all adjusted against the new texture now. Now the only thing we didn't do is the bottom. What I would consider for the bottom, I have an area of the texture for the inside and the outside. So I have this for the inside, this for the outside. I put it in there as a placeholder. I didn't necessarily know how well it's going to work, but we're going to find out here in a minute. It's time to stretch here a little bit. Take a little bit of a break. In fact, as far as breaks go like that, I am going to take just a short little break. I'll be back in just a second, so don't go nowhere. Alright, ladies and gents, we are back. Let's take a little bit of a stretch break. Bio break, even. Alright, so. Let's see, where were we at here? So we were, considering what areas we're going to use for the inside and the bottom side. Inside and outside, I guess, for the bottom of our texture here. So, let's see. Just making sure that our playlist is still going there. Cool. Good. Alright, so yeah, our bottom side. Now, these are our outside panels facing outwards. So what we want to do is select the bottom. And like I said, I used, let's go into here. So I got this. I'm going to do a quick planner. Whoa, why is it like that? I have to straighten that out. Not really sure why it's doing that. Here, let's try a flat map. That's better. See, this is what I was talking about as far as like whatever seems to work as far as the orientation, you know, your panel like that. I did a quick planner. You can see it was all wonked out. I could have straightened that out probably, but just to go through all your different mapping options, and it does necessarily make sense, I guess, to look at how the texture is applying to I had the filter on it, so I'm trying to say, so because I still had the filter on there, it's only highlighting the area that I currently had in there. So yeah. Alright, so let's see how this looks if I put this bottom onto this part here. I may like it, I may not like it. Let's see. I can already tell I may not like it. It was from around, obviously you can tell here, this is from another starter stand I had built here, but I thought maybe that would work for here, this application. Wait a minute, why is it not? The heck? should only be the one on the outside, right? Yeah. Huh. Happened here. Let's render that. What in the world? Hold on. What is going on there? Let's see. There should be a bottom on here. Oh yeah. Did I not put a bottom on this? Maybe I didn't. It's highlighting it. Let's see here. What is this doing here? Interesting. Huh. Alright, something going on here. So yeah, when I render this, it's not showing a poly there. Did I not separate these out correctly? I might not have. I might not have. Let's see here. If I render this, let's see if it's got it here. Might have did this wrong. What in the world? Okay, hold on. So those are not a poly here. There is no poly in there. What the heck? What's it selecting here? That's weird. Okay. Alright, let's go ahead and collapse this, what we got so far. Okay. And let's sendable poly. Cool. Let's see what's going on here. So there's a poly here. I'm not really sure why it's not rendering though. That's interesting. On either side. So yeah, as I showed, you usually kind of tell when it's this bright highlight like that. That's where the way it's facing. This is the back side of it, but it's clearly not rendering. So what I might have to do, I'm not really sure what's going on there. So what I'll probably do in this case is I'll delete this out. I've only got the one box. Something happened with that anyway. Yeah, so actually there's two faces in there. Don't know what happened there, but I'm gonna go ahead and fix this though. Yeah, I'll just delete that out. So what I'm gonna do, this is the outside panel, so what I'm gonna do is just create a new poly and get that mapped properly. So as an editable poly, I'm gonna grab one of these edges. And I'll probably grab this edge. Probably be the best. And I'm just going to drag this out. Okay. Over here, and I'm going to vert snap this. In here. Just going to create a new bottom on this. I'm not sure what happened to the bottom of that, but we're going to fix it though. No problem. Alright, so let's put this. There, now we got a new bottom on our outside panels. Okay. And that's still the same object. All I did was create it off the existing model off an edge. So from now what I should be able to do is apply the Unwrap Modifier again. Like so. And then we can map that properly. Okay. Should still have the texture applied to it as I did it off that edge there. This will probably be pretty wicked as far as once I that's not a big deal. Let's deselect that. Okay, let's go into our polygon. Bring up this. Bring our texture in. Okay, and apply quick. That looks better than when I did the quick planner. I don't know what was going on before. Anyway, we fixed it. So now, yeah, I want to get this into this area. You can already tell I might want to adjust this area here, but at least I'll just put it like this. Probably adjust my texture just a tad more. Let's see how that applied. There we go. See, now we got something on there. Now she's on there. Cool. So I'll probably have to adjust the bottom, but you get the idea. This one's already got like some shading and all that stuff in it. I may or may not go with that, but at least that gives me something to go by. Okay. So you kind of get the idea. Why is that still highlighted? Hate when it does that. It's still highlighted in the added poly. Here, let me go into this. It's going to bark at me, but that's okay. I don't know why that's still selected there. There we go. Now, did that hold? It did not. Okay, so I'll have to redo that. Sometimes when you go into that, when you do the hold on that, sometimes it just doesn't hold. So you just have to, in this case, I'll have to redo that mapping for that. It's not a big deal. So I got the poly selected in the unwrap. Just reapply the quick planner. And put it back into that region. Not a big deal. Yeah, so you can see all the other mappings that I have in there. I did not turn on the toggle. So you can see all the other mappings in there. And I'll be able to apply that wire to our texture if need be. Getting a lot of Lutz is going nuts today. I tried to show, and I tried to explain that, I guess, with some of our viewers last week too, and continue to do that. That's a pretty well free way, I guess, to support the stream. If you're short on funds, what it will do, what that encourages you to do, is you can exclamation point Lutz in the chat will tell you as far as being able to display an ad during the stream, and then that benefits me. It pays pennies, but it's a little bit of something, and it does kind of showcase a lot of different new games that are out there you may not necessarily known about. I know there's a lot of games that come across the Lutz that I wasn't 100% that didn't 100% know about. So there's a benefit, I guess, to having the Lutz. It doesn't cost you anything. Doesn't cost me anything. Doesn't cost you anything. But I do get rewards from that when viewers do take the initiative, I guess, to have an ad show up on there. And it doesn't take up the whole stream. It's just that top right corner, as it showed here. It was just demonstrating for you. So it's kind of letting everybody know. I don't know why everything's coming out in Spanish, though. It's kind of interesting. Interesting. It's all Spanish. Anyway, so yeah, now we got this mapped on the outside, so I can go ahead and I'll have to adjust the texture for that area, but that's fine. At least it gives me that area I'm allocating, I guess, for that part of the model as far as the outside panels on the bottom. I'm going to use this area, and I'll probably increase this for the inside bottom, more than likely. So, okay, we're going to go ahead and collapse this down. Like that. So that's done. For now. Hide that. Now we're going to unhide the inside. Oopsie. So bring this back out. Now, we're probably going to have the same problem. Oh, I hate when I do that. Got to select it. There we go. Yeah, this doesn't have... Yeah, that's probably just the way I did it wrong as far as when I detached. It's not a big deal. That was a pretty easy fix, actually, but yeah, the way I detached the inside and outside, I didn't include the bottom and such, so yeah, that kind of got borked out, I guess, a little bit. So yeah, we don't have a bottom on this one here, so we want a bottom on the inside here. These are the inside panels. Inside of the panel. So we're going to grab, this being an editable poly, I'm going to grab an edge here. Okay. And, yep, there's an edge there. I'm going to shift drag this out. Whoa, hold on. Oops, wrong button, that's why. That was caps lock. That doesn't work. So shift drag this out. And I'll get it close out here, and I can just vert snap the rest of this here. I'm going to snap that vert there, so I'm going to go to vertex mode. Select that vert, turn this vert snaps on, snap it there. That way I know it's where it needs to be. Okay, so from there, turn the vert snaps off. Okay, so that doesn't create a new object or anything like that. It's still part of the same object. It just drag selecting a new poly based on that same model, that same mesh. From here, we can... Yeah, these are all inside panels, like I said. That's why it's backwards here. Yep. So we need to apply the Unwrap Uvw again. And open this up. Apply the texture. And you can still see our mappings that we have in there all so far. Okay, other than the bottom. So we're going to go into polygon of the Unwrap. Select that poly. I think that's the right way. Yep. That's faced the right way. See, it's darker here. It's lighter here. Okay, and then apply a quick planar to that. Beautiful. And then we're going to put this in this area down here, on the other side of the steps. Okay, so we can put this right in here. And I'll probably end up making that area bigger. So like I said, I grabbed a lot of this from the samples as far as placeholders to give me an idea of what areas I wanted to. So this is going to be the inside of our floor, like that. Okay. For now, that's what I'm going to keep it at. I may end up adjusting the texture. In fact, I know I'm going to adjust this here to make it less elliptical shape, I guess you could say. So, we got pretty much everything mapped as we want, but I'm going to make a couple adjustments to the texture. Yeah, let's go ahead and hide this. Let's bring back out our outside panels. Yep. Oh, I hate when I do that. Gotta have something selected every time. Alright, so this here, yeah, I want to adjust this part of the texture. So I'm going to bring this back to get my layers. I'm going to go ahead and make a save of this. I haven't saved this yet as far as a template. I'm going to save this as a PSD so I can open it in either Paint Shop or Photoshop. Yep, save over that just to get that. Now I want to make some adjustments to this. Okay, this one here, I'm just going to rename this text. That way I know what that is. It just helps to name some of your items. You know what to do. So I got the bottom, and then I think I got floor. Yeah, so I got those two separate panels. I could have made that into one, but I guess in an effort, I guess, to try and segregate each area of the texture. That's why I got bottom and floor. So I'll probably adjust this to be a little bit bigger. This I'm gonna probably adjust this down. I just don't know how I want to do this. I thinking I want to get. I don't want any shading in it. I guess if that makes sense. But I'm not really sure what color I want it to be. So probably what I can do is I can copy. I think I'm making a mess. I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a copy of this bottom. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but yeah, just make a copy of this. And paste it as a new layer, like so. Just going to put that in the middle. And then what I'm going to do, I'm still going to keep this bottom, but I'm going to rename this as bottom 1, just so I have options I can go back to. Whoops. Didn't mean to do that. So this will be bottom 1, and this one I'll create bottom 2. so I'll turn this one off. And then this one, I'm just going to create this a solid color. In fact, bring this back on here first. Just going to line this up here. There we go. Turn that off. And then this one here, I'm just going to make this a solid color. More of a solid color. So let's do this. Yeah, that should do it. Okay, so I got that. Well, we'll see how that turns out with the ambient occlusion, if it even looks any good at all. Just to give me a couple different options. I wanted to try that one out at least anyway, just to see how it would look. This area here, I'd like to make this a little bit bigger. Just take up a little bit more of this space here, I guess. So, yeah, let's go into floor. And I think what I'm going to do in this case is just make that bigger. I can do, let's do this. In that layer, let's go like this. We'll do the deformation tool. And just make this a little bigger. Like that. And I could probably move these stairs. Definitely move those stairs. Okay. And let's see, steps should be right here. Yep. Just want to move those a little bit out of the way. Haven't even used that yet. Okay. I'm just making some adjustments on the fly, I guess, to the texture. Alright, so let's do that. I'm going to do flatten this down, save this as a new bitmap. Yes, that is what we have applied to our model here. Okay. So now we got, this is our outside, so we got to change that to a solid color. We can adjust the mapping on that at this point. Actually, what I wanted to do is make that less elliptical or whatever as well. So I want to kind of square this off. Yeah, let's do that too. So let's back this up. Bottom 2. So yeah, I'm just going to kind of square this off. I think I got this on 2. Yeah, it looks good. So I'm just going to kind of roughly square this off. It doesn't matter if I go a little bit more than what I got. Just as long as I got where the wire is actually at. Come out from here. Just kind of get an idea of what I'm doing. Doesn't matter if it's crooked or whatever. You can always clean it up later. Alright, I need to close this up. There we go. I'll flood fill that. Like that. So now we got more of a... I can always clean that up afterwards. Not a big deal. Just trying to get that area where we got that map there, so now I'll go ahead, flatten that, file, save as a new bitmap. Okay. Now that should be completely that color on the bottom. Actually, I might have to adjust the wire to it, which is fine. Yep, that's what it's looking like. So let me check out the texture here. Load it. Image. Yep, that is the right one. Okay. Yep, so it did take the circular out of it, but I'll have to redo the mapping. You can see it's got some... Yeah, so we'll just redo that. So we can reapply the Unwrap Uvw. Go in here, apply the texture. So you can see what area we used there. If you want to change that. And because I've got it this way now, I don't have to go up into here and select it. I can go right in through the edit UVWs. So that's what I'll do. I'll go here, select that, and we'll just get it into this area. Make it more of a solid color. Like that. So there we go. There's our new bottom. And I still have that other option. I want to go with that. Don't know if that's what I'll go with or not. We'll just have to see. Alright. So let's hide this. I'm going to keep the modifier in there just for now. Unhide the inside. And then this area. Still have that on there. Alright, so we should be able to go into Edit Uvws, and we're just gonna actually adjust our texture. Update map. There we go. So all I did was just have it use a little bit bigger of an area. I'll probably adjust this texture because it's a little bit pixelated and grainy later on, but I at least want to establish that region that I want to use for that, I guess. So even though the texture that I'm applying to it may be not the best right now, at least I'm establishing that area that I want to use for it. Okay. Let's go to polygons. Gonna give it a little bit of padding here. There we go. Because I am still considering, you know, the ambient occlusion, applying that. So we got everything separated. Okay. So it looks like we got that done. I'm going to render this to see how it looks there. So it does necessarily pixelate it even more just in this view. So if we render it, it actually doesn't look half bad. But I'll probably adjust that, the quality of that on the inside. Yeah. So that's our inside panels. So I'll go ahead and collapse. Yep. Collapse that. Okay, we'll hide that and bring back our outside. And collapse that down. Beautiful. So that's all. Inside and outside panels are mapped. So it's good. So now what we need to do is collapse both the inside and outside panels. Now that's all mapped to their respective areas. I can bring in the inside. Okay, so now I got both of them in the scene. And what I'm going to do at this point is at least save it. Save the scene. So that I have something to go back to if something doesn't go right. I'm at least going to save that scene. So now I'm going to take both of the inside and outside panels like this and collapse it into one. We're still using the one texture, so there won't be an issue as far as it borking up the texture mapping. Okay. If we were, it wouldn't necessarily cause a problem, and it will just take the initial and only take one texture over the other. Now, as far as apparent diffuse, if you will. So that's just something to keep in consideration. If you're going to use two different textures, you want to keep those separate so that it applies that. Otherwise, you would have to go the route of like applying a multi-sub object type of thing. We're trying to keep this simple. So I did collapse this all down so it's back into an editable mesh. Let's convert it to editable poly. We're going to bring all the rest of our stand back here. So we have our stand. So here's our whole stand. The whole thing is mapped. Okay. Got the inside. Right now it's primarily focusing on the inside panels. So when I render this, it's going to have it broken up, which is to be expected. Again, as I explained, it's just the rendering capabilities of what I got there. Both panels are there. Okay. They're just tightly squeezed up against each other, if you will. Like peas in a pod. So, everything is mapped. So at this point I got these two, and I'm going to need to collapse this whole thing. And again, I'm going to reiterate, as far as I get, we're only using one texture to map this entire model. So by collapsing that, that's not going to change any of the mapping of the other polys. Because it's all mapped to that one texture, so it's not going to bork any of that if I collapse it. But just for safety's sake, I'm going to go ahead and save it again. So far we're doing good. Then I'm going to take these two and collapse that together. And it did do it as a box one, but I'm going to go ahead and change this to stand. Change the model mesh to stand. Okay, and that'll make better sense as far as like when we actually spit this out as a new model. I think what we did, if I remember right, I don't remember what we named it, our initial model. In fact, we can kind of look at that to see. We named it, if I go into this, go in here, we named it starter, yeah, I kind of shortened it up there, starter underscore ST. So this is this right here, this is what we named our, oh, the playlist stopped again. Yeah, so this was the name of our model mesh. This is our texture over here. That was the name of our model. Right now we just have it as stand, which is fine. But that's necessarily what's going to show in our shape descriptor once we export it out. That's just to kind of give you a heads up as far as how you name it, your model in this itself. Okay, so we're going to do this as a minimal poly. Looks like an ad within an ad there. That's interesting. Man, Lutz is just going nuts today. That is the weekend. Seems to be just that Everspace though. Interesting, interesting. Okay. As long as it's not really interfering, I guess, with too much with the viewing pleasure, I guess, of all the viewers, I'm not going to worry about it too much. If it does become a problem, I will take care of it. Alright. So this is all collapsed. We got a stand. And we still have all of our other items. Yep, these are all the hidden stuff. We got the infield, the LiDAR, all that good stuff. So we're good. At this point, with everything mapped, as far as what we need, we got all of our different facets of the model is mapped, and we have them in their own specific regions and what have you. We can't necessarily apply the ambient occlusion at this point. What I'm going to do, this is what I kind of intended to do. James kind of brought up there is the command in the chat, exclamation point AO, which is the video for the ambient occlusion. Definitely one of the prerequisites for this is you need to have your model as completely mapped as you want, as far as to do just what we did, as far as to put each poly, or with the polys in their own respective area, to apply the ambient occlusion. That needs to be done first before you can do anything with ambient occlusion. Otherwise, the results of your ambient occlusion, as far as that general shading, is not going to be very quality. It's not going to bode well. So we've got all that done at this point, and we are definitely able to apply this. So what I am going to do, I'll go ahead and turn this off. We got an ad within an ad. That's kind of cool. Skip that. I'm going to turn this off here. What I do have queued up here is the actual video that James has done. This is back in March of 2016, so it's been on a while. But he goes through, and I've got it time-stamped onto the area where he goes over these specific settings for the basics specific settings that you need to apply in the ambient occlusion property. And what it basically is a render to texture, which I can kind of go through this briefly. He'll show this in the video. Okay, so the way you do this, you go into rendering. I'm just going to go loosely through this, and we're going to go actually through it. Not the material editor. We're going to go render to texture. And there's a shortcut for that, which I think is just the 0 key. But it brings up this dialog. And this is the timestamp which I have on the video where it goes through all these different settings. So we're going to kind of go through this just to kind of show this, and we're going to apply it just as he's got in the video, just to show how this works. So I'm going to keep this up, and I'm going to stop the video as I go through this and actually go ahead and apply it. Okay, so one of the other prerequisites besides having your model completely textured is to have your item in your viewport selected. This is what's populating in here so far. He goes through all that in the video, so I'm going to go ahead and bring the video up, and as we go through this, as he instructs us here, we're going to actually go ahead and apply it.
Tunnel number row at the top of the keyboard. That brings up the same window. What that brings up is a lot of options here. So we need to go over what we're going to set up here. You need to go to render settings, and I'm going to use mental ray daylighting high.
Okay, so I'm going to stop it right there. So that's one of the initial settings. You want to go into this render settings, and what you want to look for is the mental ray daylight. That's the first option, actually. So that's what he's selecting here, and you get this little dialog. This is just popping up as far as like what graphics render that you have. In my case, this is sufficient. So we wanted to do load. Okay, so all that's good. So we'll continue.
And I'm going to load all those presets. And I'm going to scroll down here. You can see the object is selected. Make sure the object is selected. If you click away from it before you open this, then there won't be any of these options available. Make sure you have your object selected so you can work in this window. You'll see that the object name is listed there. The first setting after...
Okay, I just want to kind of stop it here again. So as I said, you can see that the item is selected. You can see it's populated in this area. That's basically what he's going over here currently.
Setting the renderer, we need to talk about padding. What is padding? Let me open the UV editor here and we can talk about that real quick. When it renders the shadow, it's going to render past or pad that edge by 2 pixels in this case. And you can see I have padding set to 2. I tried 4, it ends up overlapping quite a bit. It's a medium sized texture, so 4 pixels is probably too much. You know, I've already got that set up. If we zoom out a little bit, you can already see I've got a little bit of padding figured into it when I set the edges where they need to be. You can see that down here, more than likely, that's, 4 pixels would cause some bleeding into each other a little bit there. So 2 pixels is fine. The next thing that you're not going to worry about the projection mapping. We need to go to mapping coordinates using existing channel. Make sure that's selected.
Okay, let's stop it here again really quick. So as he's mentioning there, we're scrolling through this. Let's make sure we're gonna. So scrolling through this. Come on. There you're at. Scroll, you bastard. Okay. So yeah, we're scrolling through this. We already passed through this. He's mentioning about the projection mapping, which we don't need to worry about. The other thing we need to worry about is the channels that exist in here. That's what he's going through here currently. There it goes. Trying to get that to scroll. So yeah, this is what he's going through right now as far as the mapping coordinates, as far as your channels. Again, we don't need to worry about the projection mapping. So we'll continue.
If you've only got one object in your scene, your Unwrap Uvw, if you go down here to map channel on the right hand side here, this is 1. You're probably only going to have one map channel being used. If you have multiple channels being used, obviously you want to select the correct channel for the Unwrap Uvw modifier. Make sure that matches, but there's only one in this scene, so there's only one available in that list. So I'm going to make sure that's 1. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this because when you open it for the first time, it's not going to have your object added. Right now we need to tell this renderer what we want it to render. So I'm going to click the add button right here And just in case you missed that, that's directly under that table there. It says add.
Okay, stop it here again. So moving it down there, you can see I don't have that populated in here. Let's make sure that's... Why is this freaking active? There we go. So it's not populated in there, so we want to add it. So we want to tell it what we want to do here. So we want to do ambient occlusion, mental ray. This is what he's going through, and we want to add that. So now it's going to populate that into here. Now he's going to go through the sizes. Okay, and this is going to be important. So I'll go ahead and continue it again.
I'm going to click add. It brings up this box of different things that you can select to be rendered. For this method, I'm going to use the Ambient Occlusion, parentheses MR, and that stands for mental ray. So I'm going to click on the Add Elements button, and you can see it populates the table. And if you notice, the texture defaults to 256 by 256 here. We'll get to that in just a second. We'll go down the list here. What I want to do is click on File Name and Type, and I'll click that box here next to the File Name and Type window here. And it brings up a new one where I can change what kind of file format. And let me delete the other one real quick. I'd already tried it here, but we'll go ahead and set that for .png.
Okay, I'm going to stop it there again. So that's the next thing we're going to do here is apply our file name right here. So we're going to go here, and like you said, it's going to bring up this little dialog. And this is basically just telling you where you want to save your rendered to texture, as far as it's going to apply that as its own texture. And the PNG is important because you want to have a transparency in it, because you want to be able to apply that shading over top of your parent texture. So we're going to apply this as a PNG, and then you can name this whatever you like. I'm just going to keep it as this. I'm saving this right to the desktop. Yeah, so just go ahead and save, and then it's going to bring this up here. This is the other part of the PNG that's important. You want to make sure this says alpha channel. That again, that's going to apply that that transparency to the texture. You don't want to have a background to it, otherwise you won't be able to apply the shading to your parent texture. So we're going to do that, and from this point we'll continue to watch the video.
And we'll click save. We'll do RGB 24-bit, 16.7 million colors, alpha channel, and interlaced. And we'll make sure it says target map slot diffuse color.
Okay, I'm going to pause it there again for a second. So you've mentioned this is diffuse color, which we have. So he's going to go over this area. We're getting to that point of setting the texture size appropriately. It does give you presets in here, but you would definitely want to make sure that you have this applied to what we have. We have a 512 wide by 1024, so that's what we'll end up applying here. But I'll let him continue to explain what he's going through here. So
We'll make sure our element background color is true white, which is 255 for all three colors there. And we're going to change the map size to 1024 by 1024. You can click on these quick preset buttons over here, or you can manually enter what your texture size is. Keep on scrolling down here. Next thing you'll see is the selected element and unique settings. If you're familiar with mental ray rendering.
okay, I'm going to stop it here again. So he just kind of went over the texture size. He's got his size that he's got selected, so I'm going to do this to what I needed. I need a 512 by 1024. That's the size of our texture that we're applying to our model. And basically what that's going to do is the same thing as when you do a render UV template. Same idea. You want that orientation of that to be the same as your parent image there. So we're going to apply that in there, not worry about the presets. He kind of explains over as far as like these different settings for sampling and stuff like that. Most of this you won't need to adjust, but he's going to explain that, so we'll just continue like that. We're pretty much already done with what we need to do here. Next to making sure that we have it selected to render to file only. He's going to go through all this. I'm going to let it continue through the video tutorial, but this is pretty much the only other option we'll need. And then we'll be able to render it. So we'll just continue to watch the rest of the tutorial. And
some of this stuff should be pretty familiar to you. Samples is basically the resolution of the shadows. For this, I'm going to leave it at 16. Typically, you're going to be working around 128 to 256. For the one that I did previously, it was 512, and it took about 20 minutes for my machine to render that. So obviously, the higher the number, the more complex the shadows are going to be, and the better it's going to look, but the longer it's going to take. Now, working on an older game like NASCAR 2003, setting that for 1024, let's say, you're probably going to lose a lot of that information when you convert it to a MIP file anyways, which typically adds compression to it. So there's really no need. 256 would be the absolute maximum. 128 is typically plenty fine. If the texture is going to be very large to begin with and then shrunk down later, you might want to go with the higher number like a 256 or 512. And then you're going to lose some of that obviously when you shrink the texture down, but for this example 16 is fine. 16 doesn't look terrible, to be honest with you. For NASCAR 2003 it's not horrible at all. For a modern game that might not be enough. Obviously you want your bright to be white and your dark to be black. You can mess around with that if you're setting your environment in some other colored environment. Typically you wouldn't have that in a NASCAR racetrack, but you can play around with that and see what different results you can get. Save source, you want to make sure that that's selected. Save source, create shell, make sure you have it selected.
okay, I'm just going to stop this here again. I'm just going to go back through this. We got the save source, create shell, and he's going to get down to the point where render to file only, so it's not just going to create that and keep it within the application. It's actually going to spit that out with based on the file name that we previously selected.
Box there. Duplicate source to baked, make sure that's selected as well.
We have all that.
And because we want this to output a PNG file that we can apply to our texture as a layer, it's easier to paint the full texture that way, instead of painting this wall and then trying to copy that part of the shading over to this one and then trying to copy it over to this, and then this one's different. So it's easier to do it exactly the way you would in a car file or car template by just having a shading layer on top of everything else that you're painting with no shading. So you want to render to file only instead of rendering it to the original texture or to another material map slot in Max, because if you're just doing it for renders, obviously that's completely different than what we're doing here. So you want to make sure you check render to files only and keep source materials, and I'm going to click the render button. Now while this is going on, I'm going to keep talking, and I'm not actually going to let this completely render out, but I'll go ahead and click render here, and it brings up two new windows, and what you'll see is a mental ray render to texture process window and then the output window over here. Now I don't fully understand why, but on my computer it displays a black screen and you don't see anything. Now it's not going to show anything even if you do click this button up here next to the RGB color, switch it to black and white. It still doesn't show anything while it's doing the computing final gather points. Once this gets to 100% and switches over to the actual drawing of the shading, you'll see some of the progress here, and I'll wait for that to start so I can show you the process here. But if I uncheck that and only do RGB display in this window, all you see is this vague outline, and it's hard to tell what's done and what's not. So if your computer's a little bit slow, checking that box up there for the black and white might give you a better visual indication of the process and how long it's going to take and how much is actually done. Having said that, it doesn't actually display the shading in this window. It's actually going to save that file on your desktop or wherever you chose to save that in that window right here.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of stop it right there. I want to kind of show that there's pretty good information in there as far as like when you're trying to do these types of things, depending on the settings that you applied to that, as far as the sampling and stuff like that, how big the actual texture is, 1024 as opposed to 2048 and so on, is going to determine and the amount of system resources it's going to require. This type of stuff does require a lot of system resources. James there, I think he can kind of reiterate, he has got a system that has 32 gigs of RAM and a 1080 Ti NVIDIA video card with a pretty robust amount of resources, let's put it that way. And the fact that he's experiencing what he's experiencing. So just something to keep in mind as far as trying to apply these types of things. If you've got a pretty dinosaur of a machine, this is not going to be something you probably want, the type of process you want to deal with. So we're going to continue here. So yeah, we got everything that we need as far as to apply this. We're going to go ahead and render, and this shouldn't be entirely too difficult. We should be able to see a majority as compared to what he's experienced there. We can actually see what it's rendering in this case. So I'm just going to let it go through its process here. It shouldn't take entirely too long for this. But yeah, you can kind of see it depending on your system resources, what it is you're actually texturing, the size is going to make a difference. Percent freaked out, I guess, about it because it is rendering. Just let it go through its process, and if you've got it to render to a file, it's going to save it, that shading, to that file and that format to which you put it. As far as it being, in our case, it's going to be a 512 by 1024. So whatever size that you did save it as, that's what it's going to spit it out in that orientation. We'll be able to put potentially that that shading layer, a separate layer, onto our apparent texture. And that's what we're trying to apply here. And like I said earlier in the stream, I had already did a test run of this, but we did make some changes to the model since then. So those areas that were potentially showing an issue when I did the initial test run might be fixed. So we'll have to see once this finishes rendering. And like I said, this won't take entirely too long in this case. So we'll just let this run through. Right now it's at 29%. So there is some pretty complex shapes in here. Right now you can kind of see where it's at here. It's doing all the facets of these pipes, as far as the framework. So that's going to take a little bit longer because it's got a lot of sides to it. Each one of those has like 18 sides. Yeah, they have a multitude of sides to them. So what it's basically doing is it's looking at every poly of, every facet of, the flat planes, I guess, as far as for the panels that we just did, as far as start of the stream, those are going to be relatively quick. Then it goes through, so now it's already done. Oh, nope, it just flickered a little bit, no problem. Yeah, I thought maybe it was done. So, yeah, so just looking at the status bar, we're almost 50%. 46 and climbing. So we're just going to let this continue. Yep, it shouldn't take entirely too long. I'm kind of curious as to how this is actually going to turn out with the changes, the adjustments that I made to the model, as far as the bottom piece for the inside and outside and so on, to see how this, that initial test run, like I said, it did kind of show some areas that may need attention. But with the changes that I've applied here, it may not be so much of an issue now, so we'll have to see. We will just wait and see. Go ahead and put the music back on while I'm at it. Let's see, let's put our playlist back on. You let me know if it's too loud, but I think that should be alright.
If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you.
Yeah, where are we at now? 62% climbing still. So part of the main reason why this is probably taking a lot longer, as far as like a more simple model, even though this can necessarily be considered, I guess, a pretty simple model, it's because of all those, the way we did the piping and the detail in that, as far as how many sides each one's have. That's probably why it's taking a little bit longer. If we would have did more square boxes, like square type tubing, stuff like that, it'd probably already be done. So it is going to make a difference as far as the complexity of the model, even though it is relatively simple in nature, as far as like just the framework and the panels, I guess, that are on it so far. There's still a lot to it as far as the actual detail, the number of polys. And as I showed in the previous stream there, as we looked there, I think we're somewhere around 750 polys in its entirety as far as the whole model. And I think that was just the framework. That didn't include the polys that we added for the panels, which would be an additional 8. So we're still well under like around 760 polys overall. And I can probably show that once this is done. But you can kind of see where it's at here as far as what area that it's on here right now. It's getting all those individual round tubes as far as applying all the basic shading to it as far as the ambient occlusion. So yep, I'm just about done here. Yeah, playlist is still going, and I think we are done. So the status is done. So now I'm going to keep this open here so you can see this is just the status window as far as the progress. Now what it necessarily did do, coding overloaded. Yeah, I guess it did. I think we're coming back though. Come on back. Come on back. Yeah, it did, I think you can probably still hear me, but it did, yikes. Holy mackerel. I think it's gonna settle down, I hope. I think it's coming back. Yeah, I think it's coming back. I think because of that process, and I was kind of explaining this as I gone into this, doing this type of thing, it does take a lot of system resources to do this. So as far as trying to stream it, so hopefully, James, let me know if you can still hear me as far as what I'm seeing on my end. I did drop over 1,000 frames just then. Yeah, what it was doing is it was basically all that stuff, that process that it was just doing. As far as the ambient occlusion, that's why it did that. And I was kind of explaining that prior to that it would probably do that. And it did exactly what I expected to do, because it's dumping out all that memory that it had to use from the system resources. Yeah. Yep. So, yeah, I think we're back now. We're fully back now. I'm just checking everything. But that's something I necessarily wanted to kind of show as well, just how much it takes, I guess, to do something even this simple. You know, this is a relatively simple model. It's not that complex. It has a lot of detail in the framework, you know, as far as the tubes and all that stuff like that. But if anything, that does give you a pretty good idea of how much this actually takes. I've got 16 gigs of RAM with a 4 gigabyte NVIDIA video card. A 970, I should take that. A GTX 970 with 4 gigabytes of RAM and 16 gigs of 4 gigabytes of memory and 16 gigs of RAM with an Gen 3 i7. So that gives you somewhat of an idea. This process of applying the ambient occlusion to a model is very, very system hungry resource. It steals a lot of that stuff. So I don't want to waste too much time on that. That's a big part of the reason why the stream went bonkers. And I kind of expected it to do that. I was hoping it wouldn't completely crash it, but yeah, it didn't go down. Just looking at the stats here, it did drop over 1,000 frames. So yeah, that's understandable. Anyway, getting back into this, it's done with this process here. What that did is it put that file that I had it saved to onto the desktop here. So I'm going to minimize this. It's our video. Let's minimize some things here. So we got this on our desktop. So here's our shading. So now what I'm going to do is open this up in Paint Shop here. Just going to point to that here. All my junk in here. So here's the shading. So you can kind of see what's going on here. Look at how dark this is as far as initially. But see, you got that transparency in back of this, so you can, at this point, you can basically overlay this to the, yeah, so this is the framework. Just kind of looking at how it did this here. That is really interesting how it did that. This is a different result that I got when I did the initial. As I said, it didn't look very good, but you can kind of get the idea of how it rendered each of these different tubes. Here's the bottom. Here's the inside bottom. It's got the shading for the tubes. Gonna zoom in on this a little bit. It's got the shading for the tubes on these panels, particularly on the outside. That's what's on the outside. These are the inside. So yeah, this is looking much better. Now, when we apply this, this is pretty dark. We'll be able to change the opacity of the shading once we put this on the texture. Good now? Yeah. Okay. Good deal. I had to check the... hopefully I didn't get lost in translation there. I was looking on my... But just to kind of re-mention again, as far as like, for those that were watching and as far as even in the VOD, the reason the stream went kind of kapooey there for a bit, it was just going through that process of the ambient occlusion through max. It does take a lot of system resources to be able to do that, and I kind of somewhat expected. Yeah, I need to refresh it. So yeah, hopefully it doesn't. Yeah, just checking the channel out here to see, like, they had to refresh. Okay. Yeah, it is going again. So anybody that's coming back in the stream might necessarily have to refresh. Here, in fact, let me put this in here. Let me put this back in here because they may not necessarily be able to hear me, but they're probably still there. So I'll just kind of put this over here. Alright, just to kind of let everybody know in chat that you're kind of laying out there, you need to refresh. Okay, that should probably do that then. Cool. Yeah, hopefully not too much of that there. I was just kind of rambling on about how why the stream went bonkers like that, and that's primarily because of the ambient occlusion process there. So, wow, the stream looks like extremely delayed, but okay. Yeah, just checking it out on the channel just to make sure. But yeah, it looks like it's behind by like about a good 5 seconds or so, which I guess that's kind of understandable too. Okay, so yeah, as I was saying before, you can see the result of this is a much better result than I did initially, as far as the initial run that I made here. You can see how it's applying all that around the tubes, you know, for the panels, to include the tubes themselves that are in the middle. And then here's the bottom. It's got all the shading on here for the pegs going through the bottom, and then the shading on the floor for the inside. So what we can do from this point is take this texture, and just to make sure that it's going to put it where it needs to go, I'm going to put some alignment blocks in here. But yeah, this is the main reason. I guess you apply the ambient occlusion as spit it out as a texture. Now I can apply that as a layer to your texture and apply that over your parent texture, your parent diffuse. So that's what I'm going to do right now. Appreciate you hanging around there too, James. Let me know that. I know that was kind of like, yeah, self-explanatory there, but yeah. Okay. Alright, so I just put some alignment blocks in there to ensure that it's going to put that where I need it to go. So just put those in the opposing corners, like so. I know in other paint programs like Photoshop, CS6, what have you, you don't necessarily have to do that. You know, automatically, as long as your texture is the same, orientation and size and so on as what you're trying to put in. When you put that layer in, it's going to automatically put it where you want it, as far as, you know, snap the grid, if you will. With Paint Shop Pro, it doesn't necessarily do that. So because I got some padding, like in these corners here, it's not, I don't have anything that's in the extreme corner. In order to make sure that's going to put it where I need it to in the parent texture, I need to put these alignment blocks in there, which isn't a huge big deal. It's just something, you know, as far as using different paint programs, it's going to require to do that. Alright, so I'm going to take this ambient occlusion layer and paste this over top. Actually, I need to bring this back. I can bring my layers back. And I'm going to put this right above here. I want to make sure it's above, so you get the initial idea of how this is going to. Now from here, I can take these alignment blocks out once I get it there. So that was just to ensure that it put it exactly where it needed to be. So now from here, I can just take these alignment blocks out. Don't need those anymore. But see, you kind of get the idea. Look at how it applied that, you know, the tubes around the panels. This is actually looking a little bit better than my initial run, like I said. So let's see. Now we can adjust to here. Right now we got it just as full on. It's just in a normal capacity, I guess you could say. So I'm going to put this as a multiply, so you can see a little bit more as far as how this changes. And then from there I can kind of change the opacity to it to give my desired amount of shading that I want to that. Now, if we were to think that the panels that exist on this starter stand, if these were to be considered like, you know, like a tie down type of thing, you know, as far as the thickness of the actual panels, you know, if they were like 1/4 inch or whatever, or if they were semi-transparent, this might work to our, you know, our advantage to have it this way. We don't need it necessarily on the inside as much as we would on the inside. So if we look at the model here again, I can close all this now. We got everything we need. If we look at our model here again, on the inside, we don't necessarily need that shading there. It may even behoove us, again, just considering how thick these panels are, we might want that shading to be on the inside and not the outside, as it's presented to us here. So right now I have, these are the outside panels where it's putting majority of the shading. I could necessarily apply that shading over onto the inside. So that shading is on that side and not on the outside panels. So there's some adjustability in the texture like that. So as far as all these tubing, this looks not too bad. As far as all these little shadows or whatever that are on the bottom side of our model, you know, even if you consider that, it's going to put those little shadows, I guess, for these pipes that are going into the bottom. That's all included in here. Not much went on here. There's a little bit of shading that's on the outside edges on the inside of our floor. In fact, I can kind of turn this off to kind of show. In fact, let me rename this here really quick. So this is our shading. So you can necessarily name that AO or shading. It's basically what it is shading. So if I turn that off, you can kind of see the difference there, as far as it picking up all those individual facets of the tubing. And you can change the intensity of that, as I showed. How much shading, how much of it you want there. I'm almost considering going back to what I was saying here. I don't want that shading to show on the outside panels So what I would probably do is move this over to the inside panels. And keeping in mind I have them mapped basically in the same orientation as I do on the inside as the outside. So, you know, that orientation that we already went through. I can probably easily slide this section of the shading over to this, and it should be just fine. So if I do this, in fact, I'll make a copy of this just so I have an original. I'll make a copy of this shading. Okay, and then I'm going to paste this as a new layer. Should put it right over top of it. Looks like it does. So what I'll do is I'll rename this to shading 1. Step on this. So do shading 1, just so I have that original copy. So here's my copy. I'll rename this to shading 2. And this is more or less going to give me options to go back and forth to. So if I don't like the option that you know, the changes that I make to the secondary one, I may want to go back to this option. So I'm going to leave that option available. So what I'm going to do is just drag, select all this, and cut that out, and paste them over onto this side. But in any case, you've got that to work with now. See, I can adjust this as I see fit. Yeah, that looks pretty good right there. So now I can have the shading on the inside. Now, if I was to apply this texture, we can see, at least on the inside, because that's what's showing us, we'll be able to see that shading onto, and we might not necessarily see it because it might be covered, but we'll check it out. About that. You might not even be able to see that shading on the actual model because of the pipe being right over top of it. So we'll have to check that out. So let's go ahead and layers. We'll flatten this down. Save it as a new bitmap. Nope, save it as a new bitmap. And that should apply. There we go. So what that's doing, okay, it's not putting it where I thought. Okay, so that's okay. No biggie. So you can kind of see where it's putting it. And it didn't do what I thought it was going to do. But you can see some of the texturing, I guess. Or some of the shading. You can kind of see the outside. If I zoom in on this here, so you can see the padding as far as how it's blending outside of that. As far as how it's extending past, you know, those shadows like that. And that's kind of what I was looking for. I want those shadows to come off of, yeah, the actual pipes that are on the inside. Pasted it pretty dark by the time it gets to, yeah, that's probably a fair mention there too, James. So just showing that you do have adjustability in that, you know, in that darkness. You may even necessarily find it to just leave it at the, you know, 100%. But what I am noticing, I'm just kind of looking at this now, as far as how this is, I might have to adjust each one of these. From this point, what's really kind of neat about this is I have the ability of being able to adjust each of these. Like I can cut these out and put them where I need them to get that shading applied to the model. So you kind of get the idea, like I was showing. What I was wanting is that shading that's coming off the framework on the inside and not necessarily on the outside. That's why I moved that all over. That to me would kind of make more sense. That creates the illusion that the panels are relatively thick and it's not going to show through on the outside panels like it initially rendered. So if anything, just trying to show that flexibility that you have once that shading is applied. Yeah, you just can't really see that. You can see a little bit of that shading bleed over, I guess, on the floor. It'll probably show up a lot better. Let me see if I can render this. See if it'll show it. Kind of does a little bit. It's a very subtle. Just keeping an eye on the stream there. It's taking a little bit longer to... Oh, crap. Yeah, it did kind of burp there a little bit. Yep, it did burp a little bit. Yep. Taking a lot of resources on that. Okay, it did buffer again, so it is buffering as it's doing this, so. But because we got the shading applied to it now is probably part of the reason why it's doing it. Just be aware that it is, yeah, monitoring it, so just making sure it is buffering. Kind of sporadically. Not too entirely terrible. Just about done. Yeah, and encoding is getting... It's kind of hard to do this type of stuff sometimes when you're streaming. Okay. Yeah, it is done. Okay, so it should be good to go now. Might have to refresh. It kind of stream did kind of burp there a couple times, but you can see how much more strain it puts on the system when you're trying to render that all together. But you can kind of, what I was trying to show here is that very subtle shading that's coming off the pipe onto the floor, and that's in this region here. And I did turn the opacity down, so it's probably not as extreme. And just like James had mentioned, as far as like you might find it necessary to keep that pretty dark, because by the time you get it into the format, the texture format that you need to, there's going to be a lot, you know, a little bit lost in translation possibly. What I am paying attention to, I am going to have to make adjustments. I'm not going to continue to try to render that stuff, because as you can see, it's a huge strain, I guess, on the system when you do that. So that's something I necessarily did want to show off here, but you can kind of get the idea of how this shading does get applied in this fashion. So I'll have to make some adjustments too. So on this one here, this is test 3. Yeah. No problem, James. I appreciate you stopping by and letting me know there. I think I'm pretty much done with what I really wanted to do. From this point on, it's just going to be cleanup and putting the shading where you want it, adjusting it, and so on. But I think we pretty much got it narrowed down as far as how it's actually applying to the model. I think I will probably go into creating the actual texture and getting it applied, produce a MIP and all that stuff, and we'll get it onto the model in Sandbox, and that'll probably be about it. But I'm going to make some adjustments to the shading for the inside panels here, at least, as I got it applied here, and here a little bit. But I appreciate you stopping by there, James. Much appreciated. So yeah, we're going to make some adjustments too. I don't really need this anymore. I'm going to close that. I still have that on the desktop. Alright, so we're back at our main texture here. So we need to make some adjustments to here, which I'm going to do. Actually, I think what I am going to do is I'm going to produce a wire template that I can apply to this, so I know how I need to adjust this on the texture. Make it easier on myself. So let's do that. So from what I got here, let's stand. I'm going to apply once again the Unwrap Uvw, and then open up the and apply our texture like so. And what I want to do at this point, you can really see now where we've got everything mapped as far as our framework, our floor. The only thing we haven't done is the stairs, which we'll get to that eventually. So we got all of our different sides. So I need to get this so you can already see what needs to be adjusted. If I get this wire, you can see where that opening is on this side. That's where I need to adjust the shading. I need to flip that so that it's in that. So that's why we need this wire. So from here, I'm going to Tools, Render UV Template. I'm going to set this 512 wide. Let's see, 512 wide by 1024. render UV template. That's going to throw that onto my other monitor. Yep. Oh, crap. Bring that over. Ah. Okay. Oh, for goodness sake. I can slide that over. There we go. So there. Really? Oh, I see what it did. I thought it went away again. Okay, so here's our... So I want to save this. This is pretty much the same deal as like with the... creating the shading, you know, as far as the file it spits out. You want it as a PNG. You can name this whatever you want. I'm just going to do this as a wire. That's fine. And I'm going to put this actually into my working folder for this. Yep. Let me save that there. And 24-bit alpha channel. That's important to get that transparency in it so that we can apply that as a layer. Okay, I can close that. Minimize that. So now I can open that wire. Oh, I gotta get some of this stuff off the desktop. I got so many projects going on here, it's just not even funny. But it's gonna be some good stuff. Hoping to eventually, as I've mentioned, share some of that stuff with you eventually. Alright, so again, I'm going to apply some alignment blocks to the opposing corners in this, so I make sure it puts it where I need it to go. And that's just a requirement of PaintShop Pro. I know in Photoshop you don't necessarily have to do this step, but those like that. So I'm going to, okay, so now from here I'm going to copy that. And this is going to be our next wire. So I have this wire. Okay, so you can kind of see our progression here. So I'm going to do an edit paste as a new layer. There we go. So that's, you can see that wire all where it needs to be. And I can leave the alignment blocks in there, it doesn't matter. This is just more or less for reference as far as wherever all the polys are mapped. This one here I'm going to name as wire 2. So I know which one's which. Okay, so we'll leave that there. Now we can tell, this is why I wanted to get it into the texture, and this is where we need it. Now I know how to adjust that shading. It's, now that I think of it, it's actually kind of hard to see that wire that's kind of green on green. I can adjust that though. I can go into my panels and change the color of this to something that's not the same color as our wire, which is the same green. So let's make the panels on this side. Let's just do red. That'll be a nice contrast. So if I go into the panels and just change this to red, now I can see that wire a lot better. Okay. You know, and if anything, you know, this just goes to show the adjustability on the fly that you can apply, you know, to the texture and the model and so on as you go. Okay, so now we want to go into the shading. In this case, shading 2. And we want to adjust this panel 3, this test 3 on that. We're going to take this. We're in the shading, not the wire. Okay. Alright, and we're going to... I can do this one of two ways. I can... Let me see if this will let me do this. Sometimes it'll work, sometimes it don't. Yeah, see if I do this, it's going to do this to the whole image. I don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do in this case is just cut this out and paste it as a new image. Like this. And then I'm going to... Now from here I can go ahead and mirror it. So it puts it on the... So you can see the orientation of that. Now I can line that up in this panel. So now I can copy that. Paste it back in here. Right back into here. Like so. There we go. So now we got that shading where we need it to be as far as what that opening. Okay, so we can continue to do whatever the adjustments we need here. So on this one, not really sure why it's putting this here. That's interesting. The opening does make sense. Not really sure why it's doing this here. That's on the one panel. Let's check that out. In fact, we can go ahead and adjust our texture. Reload that. Oh, I didn't save it yet. That's why. Like, what the heck? Yeah, so let me take a look at test 1. Why is it putting this here? That's interesting. Not really sure why it's putting this shading right here. I don't know where it's getting that from. Yeah, because even being on the outside, there's really nothing there. Huh. I don't know what it was picking up right there. That's about the only anomaly that I see in the... Huh. So I guess we can probably chunk that out. And I still have the original output that I had there. But I'm going to take that out of this one. Yeah. So I'm going to adjust this here. I'm going to take this out. Not really sure why I put that in there. So we're going to do some cleanup here of the shading. So we're going to chunk that out. And what I'm going to do is zoom in here really good. We're going to fix the shading up here. So I'm going to put the clone on. Let's reduce the size here a little bit. There we go. Yep, I'm just going to fix this up here a little bit. Basically what I'm doing is I'm cloning this out like that and just filling that in like so. That should be good. Got a little bit right here I could probably clean up here too. There. Should be good. So we got that opening there. Very good. Very nice. Okay, so we're gonna turn the wire off. Now we got our shading pretty much how we want it there on the inside there, coming off the inside panels for that tubing. So from here we can go layers, merge all flatten, file, save as, new bitmap. And also what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring this back. I'm going to save this as a new template. Save it as a new PSD. So I can go back and forth between Photoshop or any other paint program for that matter. Save in that format. So there we go. So I got that one saved to that point. Now it should apply that. There we go. So we got our new color. Very good. And these are the inside panels. We're looking pretty good so far. The only thing we have not gotten applied to the model yet is our stairs. That's still something that needs to be applied. And for as much as I've been doing this here, it's almost seeming like, close that, we got that in our template, and we can close this out. Don't need that anymore. So yeah, what I am considering is the fact that these steps, I probably don't want to use that. I'll probably use just like a white or a gray for the steps, and not necessarily use these prefabricated that already has shading and stuff applied to it. But if anything, the main thing to take from this was exactly how much adding that shading layer. I think this is going to add a lot of attitude to the model. I'm actually kind of anxious to get this new model spit out and get it into the game, into the track. So let's go ahead, collapse this modifier. We don't need that anymore. We needed that just to get the wire, so we're going to collapse that back. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and save the scene as it is here. So let's save this. Okay, and then what we're going to do is bring back, we're going to get all the stuff out that we don't need. We're going to get this into a model. So the only thing we need to keep is the stand. So what we're going to do is select all and just keep the stand. Delete everything else out. So that's all we need right there. Okay. It's just our stand, and then we need to spit this out as a 3ds. Okay, so we need to export this out into our working folder, which is our starter stand, 3ds, just into a 3ds. Now I'm going to create this as a new one. This is our original one that we did our prelim. So what I'm going to do is save this as a new one. I'll just put this as starter stand 2. So I still have that original one. And it's going to bark at me that the texture is going to be renamed. We don't need to worry about that. It's just, okay, so we're done with this version of Max. So we're going to reset this. Don't save, yes. And get out of this, and we're going to open up our Max 5. Open that 3ds. Apply our texture, all that good stuff, and create our pass file. So let's get Max 5 loaded up here. Give it a second. We're making pretty good progress here. I think really about the only other thing that we need to apply to our model is the stairs onto the side, which is going to be pretty simple. I think I'm going to pretty much wrap this up. Yeah, it's going to bark at me for this. That's good. That's fine. That's normal. Alright, but I think I am necessarily going to wrap this up as far as this model. This is, I think, a lot of, I think getting it to the point of the ambient occlusion is, you get the idea as far as like how much adjustability you got in the texture now. So, yeah, so what we need to do is import 3ds, point to our working folder. I just hate to drag this out too much. There's a lot of information just for something even this simple. So I need to completely merge, and I don't want to convert units. We had that issue last time. So we got this model in. And, oh, I know something I didn't do. I didn't zero it. Yeah. I did kind of forget to zero. I did. Yeah, so what it's doing is it's putting it right into the position that it needs to be. That's not how we have it oriented in the track. So if we were to keep this way and apply that translate, it's not going to put it where we need it. So what I need to fix, I can probably do that here. Yeah. But I am going to need to fix that in the scene too, I guess. Yeah, I can just do it here. That's fine. So what I need to do is zero this out. Let me see here. Yeah. I think I'm just trying to remember how. Here, let me open this up here real quick. So if I open this up, this should kind of tell me where I had the pivot. Yeah, this is our preliminary model, if you remember. Yeah, so I had the pivot. Yeah, so I'm probably going to have to reposition that anyway, now that I think of it, because our preliminary model, the translate for that model as far as, yeah, where it's located, that did get adjusted. Yeah, so our X, Y, and Z is probably going to change. Alright, so slight oversight on my part. So these coordinates that we had are, this is what we have in the track, so this is probably going to change. This is what I was getting at. So I'll keep that open. You can see where the translate was. In this case, this is kind of more centered. So yeah, we'll have to see how that. For this case, I'm just going to go ahead and zero this out like this. But you kind of get the idea. It's kind of below the ground and all that jazz. Focus on that there. Yeah, see this how it's like this. So we'll have to see how this. So as the translate, I had it like up on top here, so you can see it's more centered like this now. And this is the way it really should be. So when we put it into the track, it's not going to be where we expect it. And that'll be fine. We'll just have to make sure that we, yeah. So probably what I need to do, actually, let's go back like this. Make sure. Yeah, so we're going to need to get these coordinates, I guess, basically what it boils down to. We don't want it this way. We want it 0, so we can actually apply that translate to the track, I guess. So I'm going to go this way. No, I see what it did. Okay. So 0. Let me grab these coordinates. I'm going to put this in as a secondary for coordinates here. The only thing that looks like it changed, possibly, was just our X. I'm just going to do this here, so I'm going to go tab. That's our Y. Here's our Z. It may not be too terrible, I guess is what I'm getting at. Yep. So you can see the differences here. So the height changes a little bit, the X changed the most, and then our height is a little bit because of where that pivot was at as far as it to get our translate. So we're going to need these values in our track. So we're going to 0 it out here, at least anyway. Put this at 0. Like that. Let's focus on that, and then we're going to apply our texture as per required. Always want to make sure your texture is applied before we pass export, otherwise you'll get a generic texture. We don't want that. Okay, so that is applied. The shading, along with all of our placeholder text and what have you. Okay, so that's the name we'll put on the model mesh stand. Okay, so now we'll export this out as a pass file. Navigate to our working folder. 3ds. Now we need a pass file. And again, I'm going to do standard. I might just go ahead, in this case, I will just go ahead and overwrite this one. This is our preliminary model, because we're not applying a script to this, so whatever we have our pass file name at this point, that's going to be the name of our model once we run it through the Make 3DO program. So I think in this case I'm just going to go ahead and overwrite. That's not a big deal. We still have the 3DO initially there, so it's not like we don't have an initial preliminary model. Alright, so we got that made. So our new pass file, which is right here. Now I got to navigate to, and I've shown this process before, the Make 3DO. So I'll go into my programs, go to Sandbox, Make 3DO, and put that stuff in here. Okay, and so I'm going to do, need the bitmap and the pass file. And I'm going to make a new MIP too. But for now, this is all we need to make our model. As long as we got our texture in here along with our pass file, let's apply to it. That's what we'll need there. So we're going to have to bring up our command prompt. So let's bring up our command prompt. There we go. Command prompt. And I need to point to where I got my program at. So we're going to go. Whoops. Actually, I need to go. Yeah. Years. I know the fact that we've mentioned this several times before as far as why I wouldn't necessarily make it more easier on myself. It just makes more sense to have this program as it isn't a program, even as a command prompt. I put it in my program files. To me, it just makes more sense. So I'm just navigating to where I've got that. Oh, for crying out loud, what did I do? Whoops, I didn't put the whole thing. So I'll do, let's gonna let me do F8? Probably not. What do I got as F8 anyway? Yeah, I might do... Oh, I know what I can do. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. I'm gonna go into this really quick. Give me a second, folks. Yeah, just give me a second. Adjusting some of my hotkeys here so it doesn't step on. I got lots of hotkeys set up here and I don't want it to step on. I think it's still in here. Maybe I did take it off. Well, if it does it, then I hopefully I can. Yeah, it doesn't seem to be in here. Okay. 12, 5. Just doing some off-screen stuff here, so bear with me, folks. Okay, we got the F9. F7. Okay, I guess I don't have it in here then. Okay, cool. So I should be able to do this and without consequence. Yep, cool. Alright. So, yeah, what I want to be able to do, I have my F8 key and a hotkey, so I had to make sure I didn't have that. So, basically what I did was just respawn, I guess, what I previously typed, so I don't have to type it all over again. And then just add to this. I can get the right directory. So there we go. This should be good. There we go. Now I'm in the right directory. Now I need to just call up the program. Make 3DO. We are doing this as a pass file, so mine is P. And the name of that pass file is starter_stand. Starter_stand. Pass, and we don't have any other parameters, environment map, anything like that, so that's all we need. Spit that out, and there's our new 3DO. Now I can't open this in 3D Simid, like so. And I don't want to go by this 100%, but you kind of get the idea of what's going on with it. You know, because it's showing, yeah, the panels here are flipped. Obviously, as far as like that, so I don't. This is a pretty good example as to why you don't want to go by how it looks in here, and actually get it into the track, and go by that, because it's the way it's showing the panels, the reverse panels, the back sides, and all that good stuff. It's like my, yep. Okay, there we go. Stop the playlist there a little bit. Okay, so yeah, just to kind of give you an idea as far as like it did spit out a 3DO is. The main thing I guess to take from that, if you're able to open your 3DO and 3D Simid and not crash or anything like that, chances are the integrity of your 3DO is fine. If it does crash 3D Simid or something happens in 3D Simid when you open it, initially just to kind of preview it, then you need to address those issues before trying to apply it to the track, in this case. So we're going to cut this out and put this... And I'm going to rename this one to prelim, or even just back it up. Just put a backup on it. I want to kind of save that one, I guess. Paste that. So this is our new one. Now we're going to have to make a new MIT file based on our new texture. The way I can do that is go into here. This is our texture we want to create a new MIT for with our shading and all that jazz on it. So I can open this, I can just right click on that and open in WinMIT 2. So with all this set up, I just make sure I got it on Enter 2003. Go into 3ds, open that up. We don't have any transparency or anything like that, so we don't need a transparent color or anything like that. I'm going to keep all the settings the same as far as the mapping of 3, priority and all that jazz. Don't need to change any of that. And I'm going to navigate this to this folder. I'm going to overwrite that one actually. Yes. That's our preliminary texture. We don't need that one anymore. Okay, so we're good with this. Now we can take these two files and put those in our track folder. Copy those over, so we're going to go track. Third party, Solomon James, North Wilkes, and we're going to paste that in here. Now, the one thing, as I was mentioning before, what we're going to have to consider is the placement of that, because that pivot, you know, as far as the translate of that, it's going to change. So we're going to have to apply that to the track once we get it loaded. So go ahead and double click on this. We haven't gotten any new objects from James, so it's pretty much the same as I opened it last time. So let's give it a second to load. Really kind of curious how to see how this shows up. Alright, so the track is loaded here. So we're going to go into our camera view, and right off the bat we should be able to see it's going to be off. Yep. So it looks like primarily right now, yeah, so it's slightly off. You can kind of see, not too bad though. Not too bad. But we're going to apply those coordinates that we saved here to it. So right now we're more at 0, so it should be on the line, and then, yeah. Yep, so we'll go ahead and do that. But at least initially here, you can kind of see it's applying our new texture. It's got the inside and outside panels. You can really see now how it's looking on here. So yeah, it's got this white area here, and that's this line that I created. That's probably what it's picking up. So yeah, so we can really get a really close idea now at this point how much we would potentially need to adjust things. Yep, so it's kind of showing that line that I created between the test 1 and 2, for example. I want to see how the shading looks. See how that shading looks in this? That's really nice. All the shading on the tubes. This is looking really nice. That really makes it pop. So it's, instead of it being just a really flat color on that, you can really see how it adds some dimension. It's a dynamic to the model as far as all that shading. Now initially, like I said, if I would have kept all that shading on the blue on the outside panels, all that shading would have showed on the outside, which would suggest our panels that we had on here are semi-transparent. I didn't want that. I want that to be more solid, like it's a thicker material. So this is actually going to work a lot better as far as that's concerned. So yeah, there's our test 2. Let's look at our bottom. You can see there's a little bit of shading around the edges of where this is. There's some shading off of this. That's pretty interesting. I didn't even realize that. So you can really get a sense of the shading. Some of this we might need to step out, you know, kind of chunk it out. May not be pertinent, so like all this mess in here, we might need to adjust some of that maybe. Not incredibly that bad though. I do like just that hint of like a grunge, you know, to it that it's got on these pillars here. Yeah, so we've probably got some cleanup to do on the... Not too bad though. Yeah, so we just got that solid color on the bottom. I'll probably adjust that. It's not a huge deal. Nope, so we do have some... Yeah, so on this test 1, for example, we got some gray that's showing here. And that's, you know, I put that stuff in there, you know, pretty quickly. Like I said, so it is showing. If we bring the wire up on this here, wire 2, yeah, see how that's in the gray? That's what's showing. So because I got the wire of the model, see it's bleeding over into the gray here. That's why that's showing on here. So there's, you know, there's still some adjustment to be made. That's why that's showing. You know, and that was just a preliminary laydown of all the panels onto our model, but we got a little bit of cleanup possibly to, you know, some of these areas like that. Not a big deal. What I'm really liking for sure is how it's applying the shading on this tubes in here like this. That's kind of really neat. I like that. That makes that pop a lot better as far as even the shading that's on the tubes themselves. That's looking really good. I'm digging it. The only thing I'm not really 100% satisfied with is the way the shading is on these pipes here. That's about it. So we'll have to clean that up a little bit. I don't even think, let me see here. It's kind of really hard to tell. I'm almost thinking majority of that stuff is all, let me turn the wire off. It's going to be like right here. You can see all these spots right here. These we probably don't need. I could probably just spank all that out. You can see all of our majority of our tubes are in this part, and then our box frame underneath the stand is all in this area. So we can probably step out a lot of this stuff. That's what's showing there. So I'll turn the wire off. I can show it a little bit more. So a lot of this area, as far as this stuff, we don't need that. We don't need any of this. All this stuff for the tubes, we can keep that. So at least you can still, and that was part of why I didn't want to go too small with these tubes on here, as far as being able to differentiate if the shading presented like it's doing, to be able to step, you know, adjust the texture accordingly. So I could even probably go so far as to, just step this out here, or just chunk that out. It's got some subtle shading in other areas here, so I want to keep some of that. So I'll probably just blend that over into these darker areas. So it does leave a lot of adjustability to the texture for sure. So yeah, I'm kind of excited for that. That looks pretty good. I'm happy about it. As far as the way this turned out here, I think this is the only thing else we got to apply to this model is our stairs, and other than that, this model is pretty much done. From this point on, it would just be a cleanup of the wire, I guess you could say, to just to kind of clean up and create the proper amount of padding and all that stuff. I'm not going to do it in here. I can probably go ahead and do that in the other version of Max. But yeah, that's pretty much it. For the most part, this model is done. I mean, it's just those very subtle changes and tweaks to the polys for that, the shading and all that stuff like I was showing. That's about it. For the most part, as I said, I know I sound like a broken record, but this model is pretty much done. Yeah, so once I clean that up there, that's good to go. I'll probably adjust some of these colors here, as far as like the bottom, stuff like that, and just choose a different color of this bottom here, and whatever might change, whatever. But other than that, that's all just adjusting the texture itself, really. I think the initial layout, the orientation of it, and so on, that's pretty good. I think what I will do is I'm going to put this in our proper location based on our new coordinates. Let's do that. Yeah. I need to go into, I know what I gotta do. I gotta go into object placement, that's why. Get into the right mode, so object placement, and let's get our starter stand. Okay. And then we're gonna apply coordinates. So the X is at 0. I'm gonna show this on the fly here. On our properties, we'll set the X to 0. Ooh, that doesn't look right. Is that right? Let me see here. Doesn't seem right. No, that can't be right. What the heck? I'll be damned. Yeah, because our starter, this is our start finish line. I thought maybe that was going to go. I'll be damned. Alright, let me go ahead and apply this back. should... I don't know why it's giving us that coordinate. That's interesting. I didn't think it would be that far off. This is our starter line anyway, our start-finish line. So that's our reference. So, let's check this out here. So if we go like this, go into properties, we'll get this set right. Yeah, so if anything, it needs to go that way. This way. So let's zoom in on that. Not really sure why it's putting it there, but that's okay. Go like this. Right over the start-finish line. Okay, and then our Z-axis, let's see what that one is. That one's now at... Oh, and we did adjust that too, okay. Here, let me adjust this. This is our new coordinate. We've got it at 11.3. I think that can come down. Let me see here. Where are we at? Yeah, we are definitely up in the air. Cool. Let's see. I think this one's probably going to be too much. We're going to try it. Let's copy that. Yeah. So we'll probably have to bring this down manually. It's not a big deal. 11.3. Yeah, that is definitely going to be too low. Okay. So yeah, we can raise this up. Let's see here. Let's get this up here. We'll get this adjusted at least anyway. So we'll do 9. I want it to be above the fence. Yeah, because we've got this new, I'm going by memory as far as our picture that we had. Let me go, in fact, let's go to that. So we got this reference here. You can see how high that box frame is up from the ground, and it is over the fencing, so we gotta take that in consideration. Okay, let's go back into here. Okay. Interesting. Alright, let's do this. So let's try 9.5. 9.7, let's try that. What was it originally anyway? Yeah, it was at 9.372. So that original will probably stay. Yeah, let's actually try that. Let's put it at 9.372. Okay. Paste it like that. See how that went. Alright, that should be still legit there. So it's over the fence. Cool. Yeah, that should be good there. And it's in line with our start-finish line. Cool. Marvelous. So that's good. I'm going to go ahead and save this anyway. Close that out. Yeah, I think we're good. So yeah, now it's just a matter of getting it textured, I guess, to what we want on it, what we want to showcase on it. Right now it's just like that. But, yeah. Pretty good. I'm liking it so far. Turned out spectacular. Alright, let's see if I got... Let me zoom in on this. Yeah, so we're centered over the start finish line. Just checking out the orientation of this thing. Just kind of winding things down at this point here. Just kind of tweaking things out. So we can get this track saved with that new model. So there we go. There's she be. All in its glory. Actually, I'm going to show it off probably this way. 'Cause I'm really liking how that shading turned out on the inside, especially on the tubes themselves. Down here, obviously, like I said, needs some cleanup, but for the most part, this is looking awesome. So, that's pretty much all I had to do. I want to make sure I was able to get the texture finished on that as far as our panels, and to get the ambient occlusion applied, get it positioned into the track, and I've done all that. So that's pretty much all I have for y'all like that. I hope this was an insightful stream, I guess, as far as to get it to fruition here. As far as I'm concerned, this model's pretty much finished. It's just a matter of us just adjusting some of the mapping just a little bit, adjust some of the padding, apply whatever textures we want to it, as far as what type of signage and what have you on it, and that's pretty much it. Other than to add the steps to it, which is pretty simple. I think I've shown enough about how, you know, the overall construction of this. I hate to want to drag it out too far, I guess, as far as the creation of a rather simplistic model, but a lot of information was shared as far as the different methods and procedures and processes that you can necessarily apply to it. But I think we've gotten it from basically nothing to where it is now, and I think that's nothing you can take lightly. So, with all that being said, I appreciate everyone that did lurk in the chat. James for showing up there for that short period of time as well, as far as to